It's all yours. The floor is all
Thank
yours.
you. Okay. Let me try and share the screen. Let's see.
Share screen is at the bottom there.
Share content. Okay. No, wrong. That's the wrong screen.
Wrong screen. Okay. But that's an even more important screen to share.
Wait, let me try and get back. Where is it now?
You can, you can share screen, then choose the right screen, that's all.
Why is it? Okay. Okay, go back to the bottom. Sorry. I don't know why I can't find the bottom of the screen.
Oh, maybe maybe you can minimize it a bit before.
Am I sharing screen now? No, I'm not sharing. Am I sharing? Can you see my screen now?
No.
Am I already sharing screen now?
Like screen. It's a blank screen.
Okay.
It's
blank. It's blank.
Yeah. It's blank.
Share my meeting window. Oh. No, okay, so it was actually I was sharing. Okay. So share. Where's my PowerPoint? Oh, I see. Okay. Because I had a few PowerPoints open.
So you just close all of them, just open one of it.
Open PowerPoint.
See how technology is helping us in our communication.
Not this. I think I have too many windows open lah.
Yeah, so close all of them.
Okay, I have to close all of them first. I have too many windows open, then I get very confused.
It's alright. Take your time.
Okay.
So computers are not smart as people claim them to be, It should be computer, share my screen. They say, which one, madam?
Okay.
Oh, I said, the screen that for my PhD proposal. Oh, yes. Technology is not smart enough.
Maybe you can. Okay, maybe you can see. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Cannot.
Blank.
You're sharing Microsoft text input. You share. Share content. This one? No. Okay, this one.
Not quite there yet.
Now you can see it.
Right. Ulam
okay.
escapes. Good.
I'm sharing two applications. I don't know what is it about. Okay, never mind. So long as you can
can't see anything. It's white in color.
It says, because I think your headphone, you're not seeing the full screen.
Oh, is it?
Could be lah.
We can see here between food and medicine.
Okay, so now I'm calling it Ulam Stories and Foodscape.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Okay. Yes, and then my previous title, I can't even push. Okay, my previous title was Between Food and Medicine: Changing Cultural Notions of Ulam, Local Herbs in Penang, Malaysia. Okay, so basically I'm looking at two. I just introduced the topic through two of the articles that I've read. One is about EU-funded study. Says that overlapping between food and medicine is quite well known in traditional societies. There's no clear dividing line between food and medicinal plants, especially in indigenous and local traditions. Food can be used as medicine and vice versa, while certain foods are used because of certain assumed health benefits, and thus could be called medicinal foods. So the household provision of care and healthcare is often overlooked or underestimated due to the fact that most studies privilege the medicine of the healers over the medicine of the household. Hence, ethnobotanical research and folk traditions of wild foods can be very useful in uncovering potential of new food resources, as well as drug discovery and development of functional foods, pharma foods, and nutraceuticals. So the other article is about, excuse me for a second, there's somebody in the gate. Ma? So there's somebody at the gate.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I just opened the gate. Okay, so the second article is about, just now we were talking about the medicine of healers, privilege over the medicine of households. So this article actually is a book, a chapter from a book, really talks about the gendered roles of plant use and management. So women cultivate wild species in their gardens to keep them from disappearing. The home garden in many world regions acts as an indigenous experimental station and gene bank. So she's talking about the importance of women's plant management for biodiversity conservation and the importance of plants for women's status and human welfare. Over much of the world, it is mainly women who are wild plant gatherers and managers, home gardeners and plant domesticators, herbalists and healers, as well as seed custodians. In several world regions and cultures, women are also the principal farmers and informal plant breeders, particularly of indigenous crops. So basically, she's talking about, when we talk about evolutionary history, the focus has been on man the hunter, but not the gatherer. But actually, the gatherer is contributing more food. And the gatherer is the one that cooks, let's say the women gatherers cook. So they also have to store food, they also have to store the seeds, and so there's it's a very complex role, and they're also domesticating species. So the biodiversity is inbuilt. So when we talk about Ulam, there's a lot of biodiversity involved. It's a biodiversity question because it's what we grow in the garden, if we have a garden, or what we consume, which then allows people to produce and grow it and keeps the thing in demand and in circulation. Okay, so there are two very important food movements. One is, slow food. I think everybody has heard of slow food. And these food movements are based on ethical principles. Slow food says everyone has the right to good, clean, and fair food. So good is like it's flavorful, it's delicious. Clean is that it's safe, it's grown in a clean environment. And fair means like fair as in fair trade. So it doesn't exploit workers and all that. So this movement started in Italy in 1986 as a response to, they wanted to, open McDonald's in Italy. So this movement said, no McDonald's, we're keeping our food tradition. So they tried to, it's called a global movement in local traditions. And the local food, they kind of codify it, it's called the art of taste. So, it's actually, it's about cuisine, but it also reaches into food landscape or food, what is grown. But it tends to be, it's seen as an elitist movement because most people don't have the time. So we are time poor, right? So we don't have time to consume all this food in a very leisurely way or prepare the food in a leisurely way. And therefore, slow food is, although it has like 100 over chapters all over the world, but it doesn't really trickle down below, okay? And because, of course, most people cannot afford slow food. But now it's also gone into many things like Kita Slow is slow cities, there's slow coffee, slow wine, slow fish, even slow gaming. Gaming can also be slow. So, they emphasize quality rather than trying to do something very fast. And then the other movement, which also has influenced many other movements, is the permaculture movement, which started in Australia, in Tasmania. And it's an approach to land management. So what people think of, as food forests, right? Food garden, these are all conceptualized by the people in permaculture. So forest garden has so many beneficial layers, and they also have zoning. So for example, you plant your herbs next to your kitchen, and then you have another second zone where you plant food where you don't, you only harvest it once a week or when it's in season. And then the third zone is where you have wild things growing. So, so there you may forage. So this is of course, Australia has a lot of land, and so this movement, and this movement is usually it's people are very unmaterialistic, so they just go and live in a commune, and they volunteer their labor, and they get very good, organic food, which is grown in permaculture farms. So let's see. So the next thing is, okay, so theory of social movement. I did some reading about this. So of course, social movement used to be what they call contentious politics. Contentious politics are the most studied. And this is when groups use disruptive tactics to change the world. So these are political movements, class struggle movements. And there's also something called new social movements, which is after the 60s. You have identity politics. So you have anti-nuclear or gay rights, or now you have Black Lives Matter. And in the 21st century, you also have something which is called lifestyle movement, which is non-confrontational. So instead of change the world, it is we are the change. So we have to change ourselves. It's all about identity. And you're a vegan, or you're on keto diet, or there's also something like virginity pledging. There's also a lifestyle movement. And so it's about social responsibility. And so this is what you see on the internet now is mainly lifestyle movement, which is actually very easily co-opted by the capitalist system, of course, because lifestyle movement also, you also have to buy things like keto diet is so expensive, but people are really into it. And so lifestyle movement is usually championed by celebrities. So celebrities can really make a small lifestyle movement, just explode into something very big. So this is kind of some background to my 12 questions. And okay, so the 12 questions are here. Okay, so I think the first questions, the first questions are to create a profile of the Ulam consumers. So, so these will go into the interview. So what Ulams and herbs are you familiar with? So I'm thinking of using maybe some cards, picture cards, and say, are you familiar with these 10 or 20? So to create a core group of Ulam, which everybody's familiar with, and then things that are not so familiar. And then also, what roles do they play? Are they just a consumer? Do they go to the market and really pick up certain things? Do they cook? Do they create recipes? Some run restaurant. Are they herbalist, gardener, cultivator or farmer? Composter? Do they compost the food? Do they save the seeds? Do they have more advanced gardening skills like marketing? Or are they gatherers and foragers? So there's one person in the group who just eats flowers. So she goes everywhere and she looks for edible flowers. And if she goes to your garden, then all your flowers are gone because she'll eat most of them. So then the second question is, what are the significant sensory qualities? So this is to get the social actors to describe their tastes, how they see the view, how they the aesthetic, how they appreciate the beauty, how they taste, how they smell, and all that. And then how do they feel when they eat it? And maybe some of them shared experiences. Oh, I just found this ulam, or I just started growing this, and then I harvested. It's a plant that I grew myself. I harvested the fruit, and it's so delicious and all that. So there'll be some sensory descriptions of sensory experience. Then how is ulam part of their heritage? So some of them will say, oh, the mother was growing it in the garden. That's how they got to know all these plants. So it's about their social memories, their personal memories. And then the next one is, what are the ulam dishes they are familiar with, or dishes in which ulam are used? So it plays a prominent role. So what should be included? So people have different ideas of what is ulam and what is not ulam. And some ulam dishes are more authentic than others. So they will say, oh, this ulam, nasi ulam, this one is more authentic. That one, oh, they included those things that's not authentic. Okay. And next one. So just now I was saying medicine of the household. So again, because the article was saying, I was showing earlier, it said that most anthropologists, they make a beeline for the shamans, usually male shaman, right? When they talk about medicine, so they they interview and describe the healers, who are usually the male healers, but not so much how women are, or use how they're involved in preparing food for the health of the family. So this is where I try to explore some of these ideas of ulam as part of your medicinal food. So do social actors think of ulam as nutritive foods, health food, immunity boosting, prophylactic, or prevention, medicinal or cure? So is it based on cultural knowledge, reliable sources, or gut feeling of personal experience? So some people would say that they were not well because they had this, and usually chronic metabolic diseases, which medicine doesn't treat. So these will be like diabetes or cancer. Then they say, oh, they took these and these herbs, and then after that and they believe that was beneficial to them lah. So are social actors involved in preparation of food as medicine, and is it based on like TCM, Ayurvedic, etc.? Okay, next one is, so response to dominant food system. So are the social actors concerned about health and safety of commercial food? Are they concerned about the social and environmental impacts of how the food is grown? And do they see themselves as ethical citizen consumers? So when they choose the food, if they know that, let's say this company is involved, Nestle is involved in baby food, which has killed a lot of babies, because of the impure, what do you call it? It's not appropriate food, or the water is polluted and all that. So then do they see themselves as, they won't buy certain things, or they will buy certain things, they will buy organic food, or they will buy food where they know the source. So are social actors looking for alternative products and producers? Do they give away surplus? Do they exchange with networks? Do they exchange with their friends and neighbors? And are they creating alternative food networks? Okay. So I think the community farm is an example where there are some starting to emerging alternative food network. So Ulam journeys, how has the Ulam food journey started or deepened or broadened since the COVID pandemic? And how do the social actors learn about, and also how do they learn in the past opposed to how do they learn about Ulam now? So in the past, probably it's through personal transmission, or through the family, or through close people who are close to the family. And what are new avenues of learning about Ulam? So now it's made a lot through social media and internet. People are finding out through internet, so they do their own research, and they can compare with scientific articles and all that. So basically, there are two things: Ulam stories and foodscapes. So how do the social actors help craft stories that add value to local Ulam and Ulam biodiversity? And foodscapes, Ulam stories, so these foodscapes will be mainly ethnographic description, which I will describe just to provide context. So this context part may not come from the interviews, but it comes from my observation of what they are doing, and let's say their gardens, the markets where Ulam is produced and consumed and all that. So how social actors move between thinking about Ulam to growing, buying, preparing, and eating Ulam. And the tentative title of either the thesis or maybe it's the first article is Ulam Stories and Foodscapes in the Age of COVID Anxiety. Okay, so that's it.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of questions there. You put in some real deep thinking in the questions, and the 12 questions. Reminds me of the story of 12 monkeys, right? When you were thinking about these 12 questions, do you have something in mind about your methodology as well? How do you intend to pursue the answers to these questions?
Yeah, so of course, I think that what I presented in the first part, so I'm using abductive research methodology, for the interviews and to get the perspective of the social actors. But actually, I also put in footscapes because I want to complement it with some context. Because I think some of the, the articles I read, it gives, what the social actors think. It's like a survey, or interviews that, but it doesn't really give you some context. So I think I will just complement it with some of the context from my own observation, which is not from the social actors' point of view, but it's just a complementary, it's a supporting part of the methodology. Is that okay?
All right, okay. Let me ask more questions so that to get further clarification from you, right? So, suspend the thoughts about abductive research for a while, right? Let's think about what you want to do, and then we will find and we'll discuss what type of methodology or research strategy that's suitable to your to answer your research questions, right? So right now, you think about what you want to write. So I can imagine there's two parts to your overall research question, right? One is the stories. What does that sound like? Oh no. Okay. There are two parts to to your research questions. One is the stories, right? And the other one is the the foodscapes, right? So one is more about the content, the other one is the context, if you may. Now, if I were to reflect on what you said, what you have discussed, the 12 questions you have discussed, you can approach the 12 questions from different methodological traditions. You could do the narrative research type, right, where you actually will frame the whole thing, and we'll be talking about journeys, right? I think that your question number 11 or 12 or something like that, kind of talking about the journey of how one becomes an ulama and a farmer using a ulam club term there. So just in case you all do not know yet, I'm actually part of the member of Khoo Salma's you can unmute her. Khoo Salma's group called Ulam Club. Ulam, what's the group called again?
Ulam Gardening Club.
Ulam Gardening Club, yeah. So it's fascinating. It's a really, really amazing club. I think if you do not read it for just 3 hours, you have 100 WhatsApp messages that you haven't read yet, and they're not normal messages. They are very rich in content, a lot of guidance and sharing as well. Not just sharing information, but sharing the seeds and the real ulams. So you can imagine you're doing a kind of narrative research. So when you do a narrative research, you're looking at the whole thing as a journey, as a chronology of a person's journey. So there's a time frame, and you can capture the story based on the person's journey through this ulam, becoming an ulama or whatever. So that is one way to capture and frame your research, right? So looking at it as a journey, and then the journey will be told by the members of this community of which particular member. So that be one way, the narrative research. Of course, you can do a grounded theory, but grounded theory requires a very clear why question. So I'm not sure we can see a really clear why question. There are a lot of why questions in there, a lot of why questions, but I'm not sure that what theory you want to develop. And when we say theory in the context of grounded theory, is answering a why question, a very clear why question that is constructed based on the social actors themselves. Why do I become what? That can be a grounded theory question, right? So why do I become an ulama? So they have a theory about why people become ulama. That can be a grounded theory kind of approach. And grounded theory will allow you to capture the context as well as the content, and to go back, and everything can become data, right? So grounded theory is not quite abductive, right? So it's much more inductive than abductive. It depends on how you do it. It can even be retroductive. So don't worry about those research strategies yet. You think about what your research questions are. So grounded theory will allow a lot of flexibility in what you want to do, but it doesn't begin with the theory. That's an important part of grounded theory, is all data. So that will be one way. But then, see, grounded theory is very similar to ethnography, right? In fact, there's critique of grounded theory is where sociologists just discovered anthropology, because sociologists have all this while been away from anthropology, or anthropologists have been doing grounded theory for a long time. But the difference is, right, the grounded theory is answering a very clear why. So sociologists tend to be clearer about their research questions, right? Whereas anthropologists tend to be, this is the old thinking, right? They establish stereotypes, right? Anthropologists will be go in and giving a rich description about this community and their lifestyle and their lives and their environment and all that. So ethnography is another way to do this. So it's, you want to capture just about everything, and you have a wide net that you can cast, and you can tell a lot of different stories, right? And that is another way to approach this, is to have rich description about, and the way I see it is, you have these 12 questions. You are describing different aspects of this community, this lifestyle, or that ethnography is another way to approach it. But that ethnography requires a much more committed researcher, because you would need to show that you have immersed yourself with a bunch of, with the community for an extended length of time. You probably could do that, but you got to do it systematically and all that. So that requires a real deep immersion into the community. So you got to demonstrate that in the methodology as well. Or the other one is phenomenology, of course. Phenomenology, and the phenomenology is abductive. So phenomenology would be, you'll be asking essences. What is the essence of this? What is the essence of that? What is the essence of this? What is the essence of this? Right. So the 12 questions can be reduced to 12 essences, possibly. Yes, possibly not. But you go look at it again, and you want to capture the 12 essences of the food stories and the landscapes, but based on the social actors' point of view. So if you want to capture a context, you got to go back to the social actors. You say, is this what you see? What do you see when you talk about, when you see greed? What do you see? When you enter this context, what do you see? So the all interpretation is the interpretation of the social actors. And there is a very, very big difference between phenomenology and ethnography. Ethnography, you can do the interpretation. In fact, you are doing the interpretation. The interpreter is the person, not the social actors. So it's an interpretation of the researcher of the interpretation of the actors. And sometimes the actors, you can even say, well, I know better than the social actors because I've looked at it, I've taken notes, I've researched on this community, I look at the norms and the values and all that. So there is 4 different traditions. There are more qualitative research, you can go more, right? Are you getting clearer with the discussion of, because you have 12, I can see that you have a wide range of research questions or research inquiry. So at some point, right? You will need to zoom down. You need to be clear about how you want to do this and what your research questions are. So at this point, the four there. So your thoughts, I've given my response so far. I'll continue to give some more, but then I will get your thoughts about this. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not so familiar with the theory of research part lah, but I mean now I think I've been following what you've been saying about phenomenology. So I think I could ask those questions, but I'm not sure what you mean by distilling them into essences. So how to distill the questions into essences? And then ethnography, I think, although I'm more inclined towards ethnography, but then one is that because of the movement control order, right? So of course I can't really go and immerse myself except in the WhatsApp group. So I mean, that's why I suggested some complementary description of the context, but it's just more, it's kind of a brief observation. It's not very in depth.
Yeah.
And then secondly, also I think I do see the very strong advantages of phenomenological approach, because it's the voice of the social actor, it's their reason, their stories, why they're doing something or what they're doing. So I think that's something very important to capture. So I do want to capture that. And then I've heard of something called mixed research method or something, but I don't know whether it really exists and what does it look like.
Okay, let me just quickly answer that. I'm going to declare my biases. So I do not really believe in mixed research methods. Only if you're doing a field research, a commission research, then it's fine. But PhD research, keeping it pure is much better. It's also much safer. It's also methodologically a more sound approach than a mixed method. There are other school of thoughts talking about triangulation and all that. But if you read, I'm in a way I'm with Norman Blakey on this one, and that is when you have mixed method, you're answering different research questions, and then you might be away from what your real goal of research is. But there are different views about this, and my thoughts is also that the mixed method is a one grade lower than what research should be about. And when the triangulation, I'm not putting down other fields, it's the development studies. Like, I'm a development sociology myself, but the development studies, the people who want to use bit of that, bit of this, bit of that, and trying to put together, and seemingly but you cannot arrive at the real content of the research if you use mixed method. But it's fine if we are doing, if I'm applying for a research grant, sometimes they want to look at that, or they want to have 1,000 people to be surveyed, whereas you don't need 1,000 people. Statistically, you don't even need that many to arrive at something that is statistically significant. But then we have done research and they said, well, the ministry wants at least 2,000 people. Well, ministry do not understand statistics, but it's fine. That's what they want. We give it to them. Right? But I would not encourage you to do mixed method. Although my PhD was a mixed method PhD, but I was focusing more on the qualitative part. The quantitative is more of supporting what I want to do. So I wasn't highlighting the quantitative, I was focusing on the qualitative part. But if I may straight away give my point of view about your methodology, Kusama, my thought is that phenomenology will be very suited to what you want to do. Why? Because you use the word distilling essences. That's one way to describe it. I would describe it slightly differently, right? The essences of consciousness is what phenomenology is about. Phenomenology is a philosophy rather than it came from the philosophy tradition rather than social science tradition. So it goes into consciousness. You know, it goes back to Descartes. I think, therefore I am kind of tradition. So I would describe it as not distilling essences. It's more about, if you use an Indonesian word, pemekaran, the flowering of essences. More like, no pun intended, but the flowering of essences. Because you see the flowering of essences because they have different interpretation of a particular phenomena. So when we talk about heritage, there's this medicinal heritage, there's this healthy heritage. You know, different people would have different essences of the same phenomena. So, and I see that is the beauty of phenomenology, where you can see, you can feel, you can capture different essences of the same phenomena. And chances are, social actors will give you different essences as well. But you'll get essences. Because you go deep and deep and deep and deep, and you may be asking a deeper and deeper question, and eventually you will arrive at that consciousness. That's what phenomenology wants. If you can go back to your research questions, can you do that? Can you share your research questions again? Okay, I have so all right, you talk about roles. Do they play, right? Roles. So the essence of the role. You see, you actually have come up with different essences there. There you go, right? And that's very phenomenological, right? So phenomenologists would agree very much with that the different views of self vis-a-vis Ulam and herbs, right? So this is very much the essences capturing. So I see myself as a gardener. I see myself as a father showing my son how that he can lead a life outside of the screen of the computers and kind of that. That will be for me, of course. So, see, this is the different aspects of the same thing. So the idea of phenomenology, right? The phenomenologists will argue that the meaning is not outside, the meaning is inside. So unless we get the inside meaning, we are not getting the meaning. So that is the power of it. That's the beauty of it. So and sometimes we think this is it, but then you see something else. So it's more like the flowering of essences. I would describe it like that, right? So at the end, yeah, Salma, what you'll get is that like Eco did the phenomenological approach. So she found different themes about the idea of toiban, the goodness vis-a-vis food, right? So and how that is associated with halal or not associated with halal, right? You see different essences emerging. So this is an example. So we go to the next one. How does eating ulam make you feel? Do they share this experience? And the whole idea of eating ulam itself is a phenomenon, right? It's a phenomenon. How do the people eat ulam, and what? And eating ulam is different from eating vegetables, right? When we talk about eating ulam, the feel, the meaning is different from eating vegetable. A vegetable is like you cook some vegetables and then you eat, and then this whole idea of mother told the son and the daughter, the children, to eat your vegetable, right? But you don't see the same line of eat your ulam, you don't hear that. So I think for me, when I interpret ulam is something that is more closely related to more adult life, right? the adults eat ulam, right? The kids eat vegetables. They could be like that, right? Because my mother never asked me to eat ulam. He said eat vegetable, right? So it's a different interpretation, the ulam. And yet, ulam is probably one of the best sources of vegetable. It's fresh, it's not cooked, it's local, whole. So the eating experience itself is different as well. So the cooking of there's ulam that you can cook, ulam you don't cook. Usually ulam you don't cook. So this I think there's and then food heritage is also interesting, because in our ulam club, right? There's of course there's this Nusantara Malay heritage, but there's also the Chinese heritage, and then there's different heritage coming in, right? And I just discovered that the terong pipit, the terong Belanda that we eat, is also is actually Turkey berry. I didn't know it's Turkey. Suddenly Turkey, kita punya ulam Turki dapat nama lah ni kan. Last time Belanda, no, Turki dapat nama. So different people. So the heritage is another essence of ulam. I think you can capture this very well using phenomenology. If that's what you want to do, but I do not want you to do something that you do not want to do, right? This is the important thing. You do not want to be limited by the methodology. Methodology should be the enabler instead of a constraint, right? But the constraints that are being imposed by methodology is a form of discipline. It's a form of method. It's a form of science, right? Because we are actually in a social science. So the method. So the method will keep it authentic. The method will keep your research reliable and valid, right? So the methodology is about keeping it authentic, keeping the integrity of the knowledge more so than constraining it. But of course, each tradition has its constraints, right? And it has its weaknesses. But if I were to respond to you, because you do need, I think, need to start focusing on your methodology and eventually to start the process of writing up chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And so when you enter chapter 3, it's about methodology. You will need to start deciding on what methodology you want to use and start pursuing your research on this methodological path of collecting data from this method. But as a supervisor, I do want you to understand the different methodological traditions as well. So the narrative research is actually very suitable as well. If your research question is about the journey, and there's a chronology of the journey, and what you want to capture is the story of the people who are walking through this journey. So it goes back to your research questions, which is the next thing I want to tell you. That's it. These 12 research questions need to be summed up into much more limited numbers instead of 12, right? So I haven't seen the 12 research questions before. So you need to reduce it to maybe 5, 3, 4, 5. That's good, right? Even 5 is stretching. 6 is really stretching it, I think. Why do I tell you this? Because research questions will be the compass, right? And probably the most important part of your research is the research questions, because all research is about answering research questions. And at the end, you want to be able to make the case that, look, my findings answer all of my research questions, answer them methodologically sound, and they contribute to a theoretical vacuum that is not being filled by current literature yet. So you do want to summarize or reduce, eliminate, combine your research question into 3 or 4 or 5. 6 is stretching it, right? And I told, I'm not sure, I've said this many times, right? And this is what my supervisor told me. He said, Reef, be careful about asking a lot of smart questions. You have to answer them, and you have to answer them well. So okay. So I reduced my questions. So when I started out my PhD last time, I had, I think, 7 questions, and then reduce it further. Last time, I think about 3 or 5 questions. Yeah. So that is something you want to do with this, with the questions. But at the beginning, this is good that you have you're exploring your thoughts, you're exploring the research, and this is what I like about your presenting, the students presenting, the candidates presenting their work, so we can go through the thought process, right, and then arrive at a better place after that. Let me ask you about your sampling, which is actually, of course, I'm jumping the gun a bit because the sampling will be determined by the research questions. But you probably have certain ideas about where you're going to collect the data, who are you going to ask, who are you going to research on. Yeah,
So I thought that, okay, my idea is actually to interview the people who have some more in-depth knowledge. That means, you know, there are some people who are just beginners to Ulam Gardening Club, so I won't interview them. I will interview those people who are, you know, who have become like the informal advisors, right, of this Ulam Gardening Club. And whether I should also, originally I was thinking of also interviewing people outside the club, which are like somebody who's running an organic farm, but so long as there's some Ulam content, you know, not just growing vegetables, but also growing this kind of herbs. And people who are maybe involved in, you know, like there are some restaurant people who actually serve Ulam, but they're not in this group. So I would also interview them. But what do you think? Do you think that I should, you know, be broader in my selection of interview subjects, or should I just limit it to this group?
Actually, the question is a question you need to answer. See, if you limit it to people who have been growing ulams or have more in-depth knowledge, then your research questions or your title will have to to make that clear that this is, you know, it'll be what is the food stories and foodscapes of who that particular so it's not you know, anyone, but you are focusing on a particular group of people. So that is one. The second point is also about a theoretical vacuum, right? A part of the idea of crafting the research questions and choosing the sampling is about thinking about which or what theoretical vacuum you want to fill in. What is it that's not been answered in the literature before, right? You did also highlight just now at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about women, right? So if you go women, for instance, I'm just giving an example, right? But I'm connecting this example with your presentation. If you want to address this issue of women, then the battlefield will be gender studies, right? So you want to look at the discourse and the literature on gender and what's missing there, and say, I haven't seen any discussion about Ulam or whatever. So you're doing theory building of women ulamas, for instance. So you see how sampling is connected to theory now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm not keen on gender studies actually.
I'm just
I
an
rather do
this is just an
I rather
example.
do food anthropology.
Okay. So even then, let's carve the sampling in a way that is theoretically or strategically sound, right? It could be urban farmers.
Yeah, urban farmers.
Urban farmers, right? So, is there a theory in that? So, if you want to do urbanization, you can look. So, the idea now, right, is to in your first and second chapter, you will need to think about which body of literature you want to concentrate on, because that's where you want to look for that vacuum that you want to shed light on. So, so it's connected between the theory or the literature and the sampling. And however, you could have, and this is talking about publications later on, right? You could have the same findings answering different research questions, right? Eventually, so if you're not looking at gender, but then you have sufficient data or findings on both men and women, you can do a comparative study. You can write something in a publication looking at gender differences. You can do that if you want. I'm just giving an example. Or you could look ethnic groups. I remember we talked about this in our first meeting, right? You can talk about different ethnic groups. Or you can look at, what is it? People with, since we are talking urban, people with landed property, without landed property, a bit difficult without the lands, but then, how do they approach this? So these are different theorizing that you can think about, and that you will need to have in your chapter 6, your analysis, or chapter 5, depending on what how many chapters you have, right? So the analysis is where you reconnect with the literature and you show the connection between your research and the theories out there. What's missing there, and this is how you're contributing to that vacuum. So so you see the point now, right? So that's why I'm asking about the sampling as well. The sampling, in that sense, the sampling is important as well. So the sampling will be helping you or limit you in answering your theoretical questions, theoretical inquiries. So right. So
okay, maybe what I'm thinking about is something like reconnecting to food knowledge, because people are starting. I mean, it's a global movement actually. Like in urban farming and taking more interest in what you're eating. But it's a very local example of how people are reconnecting to food knowledge about what they're consuming and what they're growing. So I don't know where. I mean, there is something like that in food anthropology, but maybe not very specific or not very pronounced. It's not like gender studies is very clear. What needs to be done. Or urbanization studies. So how people still grow this thing when they move from the landed property to apartments. But then to me, it's not so interesting. It's what's more interesting is it's a kind of transformation. It's not really a lifestyle movement, but it is a kind of alternative to dominant food system.
Yes.
I
like that too. I like that very much too. Yes. So this is where it becomes very exciting when you see a kind of a transformation of knowledge that leads to transformation of attitudes, that leads to the transformation of behavior, and ultimately leads to transformation of lifestyle, that kind of thing. So so you did mention earlier on another part is the social movement, right? And you highlighted. You highlighted the
I think it's not a movement yet, lah. It's just a kind of very fledgling sort of thing. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a movement yet.
If I were to do this research, but this would be me, right? Maybe it would be called something like Ulam, theorizing on the Ulam movement, kind of thing, Ulam lifestyle. So it's like it's the third, the lifestyle movement that you were talking about, right? So it's because it does have a transformative power. It does have a transformative value to it because it transforms many different aspects of modern human life, right? From the knowledge, attitude, food, the food behaviors, and anyway, in your group, right? Even how we treat the animals, how we treat snakes, how we treat insects. The whole idea of becoming animal friendly, right? I do have some views about that too. Right? So, what type of snakes should should be friendly with? What type of snakes should be more careful with? Right? Do we kill snails or do we not kill snails? Right? I don't know. This is the whole. So there's a transformative part to this whole research you're doing. So I'll let you go and explore. These are the various possibilities, right? There's a sociology of knowledge, which is a field that is not quite developed, right? Sociology of knowledge, especially lately, I think Carl Mannheim, I think that was the old, Carl Mannheim, right? Or you can talk about even Thomas Kuhn. Thomas Kuhn is a scientist, by the way, who wrote on the scientific revolution, principles of scientific revolution, who actually popularized the term paradigms, how paradigms are being created, right? But this one is going much further down the history, but the whole idea of knowledge theory, or knowledge as one field. The other one you can talk about, of course, is local knowledge, indigenous movement, and all that. But what's interesting is there's not enough. When we talk about indigenous, right? Oftentimes it's associated with somewhere the rural. Right.
Like the orang asli.
Orang asli, right? What Wazir want to study, right? But now there's urban anthropology, and the work you're doing with heritage is very much relevant to what you're doing, right? The heritage side to it, and I'm excited talking about this because my critique about the heritage project is the whole idea of empty heritage that Anthony Giddens were talking about, where that we are preserving the shell at best, but it is empty in terms of its spirit, is empty in terms of its inhabitants, right? So, but this thing would actually revive the local heritage and then preserve it and conserve it and enrich it. I think this is great. This is great.
So maybe I can just make a few comments before we end. Actually, my interest is in biocultural heritage. So. So it's and you're saying that the transformation it is about indigenous or local knowledge, but it is about urban society, urban urban people, right? Sort of reconnecting with this kind of indigenous knowledge. So some which they may have inherited, may have come through the family, but now is much broadened because they can do research on the internet and all that, and through creating this community where there's a lot of knowledge sharing. And the people who are attracted to this Ulam club, actually ulama is an interesting word, but then it sounds like ulama. So
so people are afraid using that. Ulama is different. Alama is another thing. Alama. Ulama and farmers, right?
Farmers, yeah. So as you have noticed, the people who are attracted to this club, they have already certain type of ethical behavior, attitudes,
Yeah.
So like they're very kind to animals and all that. Otherwise, people who love plants, right? People who love plants are already certain type of people, and people who don't love plants they won't be interested at all to join this, So there is a kind of unspoken sort of mindset among the people in this group lah. I don't know but all these things that you said, that theory of knowledge and all that, is like just too big. I think it should be a bit more
Focus.
Focus on not such a grand theory, but it's kind of a smaller type of theory which talks about the current phenomenon of people changing the mindset about food and growing food lah, which is a worldwide phenomenon, but it is a local instance of that worldwide phenomena. So I don't know where to put it.
Okay.
But
I actually have. I did not want to impose my own thoughts too much, right? But especially theoretical thoughts. But since this is very close to what I have thought about in relation to your research, and this is phenomena I would describe as kampongization of the urban community. The kampongization, right?
Kampongization.
And kampong is a good word to use because in English uses the word compound. Compound actually come from kampong, right? The kampongization. So it's like recreating kampongs in the urban community kind of thing, right? And it is a phenomenon, right? But starting with the plants, and then caring for the animals, and this reviving the kampong knowledge, right? A kampong doesn't represent different kind of kampong lah, not the but then it's connected to the local, that kind of thing. But then this is what I would, if I were to write a paper about this, it'd be a kampongization of the urban community, and the Ulam is actually is a Trojan horse, Trojan horse to the kampongization of Trojan horse, meaning a subversive way of getting urban communities to kampongize the lifestyle, right? It's much more relaxed. It's spending time in the garden. Is looking at the green. It was about sharing, so much sharing. The people, I mean, almost every week somebody is sharing seeds and plants, and sharing of knowledge is constant there, right? And the sharing economy coming in, which is very much a kampong.
Sharing economy,
sharing economy is very much a kampong phenomena, right?
That's right.
And when I first moved to my new house here, right, my neighbor was sharing his plants with me. He propagated. I said, okay, this is good, and then now sharing with him. So there's this innate instinct of neighbors to share, but somehow we have created all these structures that we seldom share, right? I do not know, but this is one way to capture this whole phenomena. To think about one way to capture this whole phenomena. And then you will go closer to grounded theory, of course. Grounded theory wants to capture one word, describe the whole thing. So anyway, something to think about.
Think about it further. Come back to you next presentation.
And after all, Sampris is fighting for the kampong as a heritage, right? kampong building, including Masjid also. But then what's the point of having the kampong kampong house without having the kampong spirit, without having the kampong knowledge, without having the people living in there with a modern kampong spirit? That is another discussion you can have in chapter 6, right?
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So the next one, then in your next presentation, I look forward to having a much more concise research questions, right? You want to also you need to decide on what methodology you want to use. You want to state that clearly, You can still change, of course, but you will need to have a tentative decision of what you want to do, and the sampling. You need to think about the sampling. Who do you want to focus as your main? If you do different groups, then you want to do maybe you want to do a comparative thing, but you still need to capture in your research questions in there, or even your research title. You got that. So it's about the theoretical grad, your research questions, the methodology, and the sampling. Yeah. So the next presentation we'll want to see that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you. All right. We'll take a 2-minute break and then we'll come back. 2-minute break, and then after this we'll go back to my brother, Reeza. You ready, Reeza? Get your slides ready. Yeah. Anyway, if anyone has questions about or comments to make about what Khoo Salma has presented, write them down, then we can have a discussion on that one too. All right, yeah.
I have the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Is the member of the Ulam club mostly from the either people maybe, or if it's
repeat that, because last part wasn't clear.
Sorry, is it who? It's like actually
the member of the Ulam club. Are they from the elder people maybe, or there is young people?
Young people, not so many, but there are a few, yeah. And then mostly they're just ordinary people living mostly middle class people living in Penang. There are some people who are not in Penang. They're also and then there's some expats also who are living in Penang. Some long distance that people in KL, but they come but they join this group because there's a lot of sharing about recipes, and then also gardening. So that some are just growing things in their condominium,
So it means that mostly they do gardening also, right?
Yes, mostly yeah. So that's why it's called Ulam Gardening Club. So they grow their ulam. Yeah. But they also talk about vegetables, not just ulam. So there's a lot of just growing vegetables. So ulam is just like they're interested in ulam, but they mainly grow the food that they eat, or they try to grow a few things. So of course they still go and buy from the market. So maybe some are growing a few herbs just to put on the dishes. Some are growing, maybe 50% of the food. Like I'm trying to grow 50% of my food, of my vegetables, not and then the rest, of course, we buy from the market. But basically, what you grow then, at least is organic, because what you buy, maybe there's a lot of pesticides. So there's a lot of concern about health and food safety. And then they talk about other things like where to buy something. Then they saw some animals. That's what Prof was talking about. They saw some animals, and then the monkeys are attacking the trees and things like that. So that's how they start talking about animals.
As far as I know, that the urban gardening movement actually it is very common, I think. But when focus on the ulam, of course, this the local term, I think, because last week I watched in YouTube that there is the gardening in USA. They back to the nature, and they build the what called the gardening using the land in the neighborhood, and then they garden and the share with of course this perspective from they said that they need to build the gardening, and then they using the what called the vegetable, but they're not using the ulam, because the ulam is maybe the local term, but the movement of the how to garden and the back to nature could be related with the global phenomena. I think.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yes, it's community farming or urban farming.
Community farming. So there is theoretically there is theoretically there is the connection, the global and the local, but with the I don't exactly, but we using the uniqueness of the local movement based on your your presentation.
Ulam is also related to jamu. But it's not exactly the same. Jamu is more medicinal. Ulam is something like between food and medicine. Some is food, some is it's a bit of a mixture.
Jamu ada. Bukan di sini di
Okay,
Indonesia jamu.
so I think
Tapi kalau di sini kurang. Kalau jamu associated Indonesia bagus.
and still sharing.
Alright. Just to follow up on what Muzakir was saying just now. Okay, I forgot what I want to say now. What is it? Yeah, about the something about
community or urban farming. Urban farming.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Community farming. Yeah.
There were. I've attended a seminar talk last time by Penang Institute. Or was it Seri? At that time was Seri. Was not Penang Institute yet, I think. It's not. I remember Gobali was chairing it. They invited a economist whose expertise is in food economics, right? Food economics. I think he's from the States. I forgot his name, but he's one of the big names in food economics. He argued that it is not. The whole idea of urban farming is not a viable proposition, because urban farming, right, doesn't solve food problems, doesn't solve the food crisis. So he presented a much more globalization view of the food problems that the society is facing. He was saying that you cannot deliver to Tesco, you cannot deliver to the major supermarkets and all that. And then the whole idea of, and he was using economics statistics, right, to show how it's not practical. The whole idea of logistics, the whole idea of economics, right, to show that under a world of globalization, it doesn't work. And he shows that there's one country that is more successful, right? Well, at least more successful. I think, but he quoted more successful, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's our neighboring country, it's our neighbor, Singapore, who has food security, one of the highest food security measures, supposedly, is Singapore. And Singapore doesn't have so much farmlands, right? And it can have high level of food security. So it was showing all this proof, that why urban farming. But I think this big jump he's making about farming is not working. So coming from California is a bit question mark, because California is much more progressive and has among the most progressive, farming community in California. But Muzakir, your point about globalization, global movement and all that, so there is a counter argument against what is it, the urban farming and all that. But then another point, just another talk I attended, but this one was when I was in with my PhD, also about globalization. It's about food miles, right? Food miles. So there's an argument about, but then this is in my class. This professor talks about how the food miles is actually damaging not just the environment, but also the local economy, because there's a shift towards cash crops, right? So people stop planting food, vegetables, food that they can consume for their local consumption, because the food mile has been shortened in the sense that because of the logistics, and people can transport food very easily, very quickly, very efficiently now. So people start planting vegetables, wheat and rice. Instead, they plant things for the rich people. Plants, they grow peanuts, they grow things for the rich instead of the poor. So there's the counter argument against the other more capitalist argument. But then my supervisor is anti-capitalism, so it's another story. So but then there's something to explore, yeah, Salma, in your research as well. Yeah, but there'll be
actually,
yeah.
I think I did. I was trying to address that in terms of alternative food networks, because so the argument is usually that the civic agriculture or the local agriculture, it cuts out the middleman, it shortens the food miles and all that, so it's intrinsically better. But of course, there are some people who say that no, even in local agriculture there can be exploitation, or in what do you call it, in even organic agriculture. So there's a very famous article how when they grow this yuppie food of salad, mesclun salad, that it's still using the migrant labor and using very but it's organic food, so people think it's a very kind of progressive kind of food. So, but I think this urban farming phenomenon, it also, first of all, it reconnects community, and this has been shown. This is the new phenomenon which actually helps to. So when they do housing projects, it just it's just empty, but when they put in the component of urban farming, it actually reconnects those, the neighbors and all that. And then secondly, that it also offers diversity, food diversity, because otherwise you just buy vegetables from the market and it's the same type of vegetables, but you want that diversity, and you want that diversity which connects to your food heritage. Because there's all those ulam that you cannot get in the supermarket, you can grow it yourself. So it's a complementary role. You won't grow enough food to live on, but it complements your diet. So anyway, many of those questions actually have been answered. The economists are too, they just think in terms of everything is in a block and everything is in figures, but actually our world has been destroyed by economists. Economists are mad people who think that you can have perpetual growth. And the whole paradigms of which have come up by produced by economists, results in industrial agriculture, industrial use of fertilizers and pesticides and all that, which actually has destroyed the soil, destroyed everything. So this is more like we're thinking in terms of regenerative agriculture, which can be done even in your own backyard or even your community farm or whatever, So regenerative agriculture is also another movement which restores the soil. And so all these things are kind of connected. And I think what I'm trying to see is to see the connection, but then I don't know, in terms of methodology, what I can use to support this connection.
So now, Salma, the important thing you want to think about is your battlefield. Which one you want to go into? So, I mean, the agriculture is a big thing, or you can go the local heritage. That one will be something that's much more focused. And I do think that part of heritage has not been emphasized even in the world. I think the kind of the green heritage discourse, there's not enough emphasis on that. It seems that
that's right. The closest thing is that actually I also take part in some of these heritage webinars. So the people in the Philippines, they started to grow food in the intramuros. Intramuros is the very famous fort,
Yes.
And then they are so excited about it. So that this is actually something very new, where food and heritage and agricultural heritage is actually combined. But it's only beginning to happen now because of COVID and the lockdown. So this is a new movement, I would say.
Green heritage, the term.
Green heritage, right? There you go. Green heritage, right?
Neologist.
What's that?
Neologist, the new.
Neologist, right? Green heritage. But since you talk about that, but my neighborhood is just Indian Heights, right? More quite elite neighbor. Although I'm not, but I'm just a lecturer, right? I hear apa ni ayam berkokok pagi, early in the morning. I said, so my wife said, like, sounds like Bali Pulau, it's like in the kampung where I can hear chickens. Well, some of our neighbors are actually breeding chickens. So this, and there are very established families also, which is interesting. So you can hear the sounds of kampung in urban area, right? Even my son seldom hear that.
Ayam berkokok
Ayam
symbol of kampung.
Simbang kokok ayam kampung, right?
Ayam berkokok, the sign of the kampung.
The sign of a kampung, right?
The birds.
Bird chirping, right? Yeah. And the snakes too, but that's story. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Kusama. I think it is I do want to have discussion besides just the research. So that is, which is another part of writing up your thesis for all of you. And this is the advice I want to pass along. We want to demonstrate that we not only understand the area we are researching on, but we also read around the subject, and we can demonstrate that this subject is connected to our other subjects. So there's a good scholar would demonstrate that as well in PhD.
I want to mention something.
Please.
I want to mention something.
Please do.
Currently, in India, there's one state called Sikkim that does all 100% organic agriculture over there. Are you aware of that? So
which place is this in India?
Sikkim. There's a state in India that does 100% organic farming. And by doing that, they manage to lower the diseases and hospitalization and all that. All the normal chronic diseases are to do its minimum. However, because it is organic farming all over the state in Sikkim, 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 the powers that be that control insecticides, pesticides, and all these are all held owned by the Rothschild families and all that, as well as the media as well. And they hush the whole thing off. They just keep quiet, and they don't want it to be known to the world, because they will lose out. They will lose out in terms of all the because they also own Monsanto and all that, right? They own that one. At the same time, they also own the owners of all the pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Moderna. They also own that. So basically, this group of people, this group of elites, people that control the world, they can't even control the media as well. So therefore, they put down. There's a lot of censorship that happens in the world previously and also now, because of this COVID and vaccination and all these things. There's a lot of censorship going on all over the world. So I just want to share that one. Sikkim, Sikkim, Sikkim in India. The whole state, 100%, whole state. I'm curious to know what is the COVID rate like in Sikkim. I think it's one of the lowest in the world. Sikkim, yeah.
Sikkim, the location nearby Himalaya, I think.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere there. They don't look like Indians. They look like more like Tibetans, and that sort of race. That sort of race. Yeah. They look more like Tibetans, Tibetans. They don't look like Nepalese as well. Because in our country we got Nepalese, right? But more of the Tibetans. Tibetans are very Indian, right?
Dalai Lama look.
Yeah, Dalai Lama, yeah, correct. Dalai Lama look. Yeah.
Okay.
They look more like Dalai Lama look, yeah, correct. That's what I have to share. And I think our government and all over the world should adopt that, because they've done it successfully.
Yeah, sure.
But we I really don't know what our government is doing. Our previous government and all governments are doing all over the world. I really don't know. To me, they're all cartoons out there. Cartoons. All over the world, not just in Malaysia as well. all over the world. The previous government all cartoons, the current government all cartoon in Malaysia, and the previous government all cartoons as well. So, and all over the world are also cartoons, in my opinion. So that's the reason why we have got so many havoc chaos in our country, in all over the world. Yeah.
But cartoons we have the superhero cartoons, we have the villain cartoons also. So, and the Donald Ducks and the Goofies. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. But the also I think relevant to the discussion is that because of the interconnectedness, interconnectedness of organic and non-organic, right? In order to have vegetables to be certified as organic, it needs to be in a certain certain context, right? It cannot be too close to the non-organic, the GMO kind of thing, right? So the non-GMO genetically modified organism, whatever, right, can affect organic food as well. So the larger the space, the better for organic farming. Okay, thank you. We can move on to the next presentation, which is yours, right? Are you ready?
Yeah, me, my. All right. So okay. I'll share my screen now. I'll share my screen now.
Okay.
I'll share my screen. I'll share screen. Share. Okay. Right. So these are my slides. By the way, if I've prepared about 20 slides here. Yeah.
Okay, too many, but it's okay.
Okay. So I put my slides in OneNote so that I can do some annotation as well. Sorry, I can do some annotation and explaining lah. So this is the title of my presentation or my new area. But this was the area that I wanted to do when I first submitted the proposal to you lah. You know what I mean? And then also it triggers me. Sorry about this. Sorry, let's off this thing on. Sorry. So and then also it triggered because of COVID-19. So the title of my the proposed title of my presentation here is Wealth Creation and Preservation for Family, for Self and Family during COVID-19. So and it is a case study of a Tariqa, Muhammadiyah in Nusantara. Tariqa here is a Sufi order. It's a Sufi order. It's a Sufi order or spiritual order. Spiritual order. Spiritual order. So for the Indonesians, for our friends from Indonesia, they are very familiar with this because in Indonesia we have got two schools of thought, which is like Nahdlatul Ulama, NU, and also Muhammadiyah. So they are very familiar. So in Indonesia, the Muslims are almost literally divided into these two sects. So the NU or the Nahdlatul Ulama are mainly the supporters of Sufis. And also the Muhammadiyah here, these are mainly the Salafis and Ahlul Hadith.
I think you will find some disagreement there, but continue on.
Alright, I'll continue.
There's some disagreement there. It's okay.
I'm going to move on. So this is
Salafi is a different sect altogether. But it's okay. Continue on.
Alright. I'm interested to know as well what is the current state in Indonesia now.
We will talk about that later. Otherwise, we'll be not focusing on that.
Okay. Alright. So let's move on. I will present first. Then after that, I would like to know, of course, because I want to write papers and all that on Indonesia and on the Sufi and all that. So let's move on here. This is the general state of being in the world right now. COVID-19, according to World Bank, is worse than World War II. Is really worse. You know, it's one of, you cannot imagine because the impact is all over the world. This is the unemployment. This is the unemployment. These are the food accommodation. 144. These are all the affected. These are all the affected businesses. You know what I mean? So altogether, there are about 37%, close to 40% of the global employment affected. When
Ini lucu.
Hmm? Kenapa?
I'm sorry bro. Masya Allah, suka pencet bro.
Oh,
Astagfirullahaladzim.
everyone will also stop, right?
Ya, maksud saya adalah I want to leave the meeting bro. Tapi saya salah tekan end meeting for astagfirullah. I'm so sorry bro.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Right. Okay.
Aduh,
Ada connecting balik? Kena? Udah.
boleh.
Okay.
Tadi presentasinya bagus bro.
Huh?
Tadi pas masih memperhatikan gitu bro. Aduh, enak gitu itu. Astagfirullahaladzim. I'm so sorry bro.
Ada, maksudnya they have to connect,
Join again.
join again. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let's just say that you could glitch. Okay, you just explain that. Right. Kaget tiba-tiba. It's okay. So 4 participants are waiting. Who else is not connected? Okay.
Sikkim. Double K.
Okay.
So sorry bro.
It's alright. Okay, it happens. Can you turn off that switch? Okay.
Taking a break, is it? No.
No, I'm here. I'm here. We are here. Sorry for the technical glitch.
I thought it was I thought I closed the tab or something because I was.
No, this is on our side, so.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that bit of press the wrong button a bit, and then you get that.
I thought I pressed the wrong button.
No. So the problem is on our side.
It was me who pressed the wrong button.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was saying about economists. So I've been telling my economist friends. I said that you are the problem. That's why we have all these problems today. Because now he's talking. Dr. Limahui.
Uh-huh.
Now he started to talk about degrowth.
Mm.
Degrowth. Degrowth has
Yeah.
been.
Yeah.
People have been talking about it for a long time because economists always say how to have perpetual growth, and then a place like Sikkim where people are healthy, the hospitals are not making any money. So if you have any private hospital there, they won't make any money. So your GDP will be down.
Yeah. Yeah. If insurance companies are not making money,
So if healthy people is not good for GDP at all.
not good, not good, not so good. That's not how we, you know. And then it reminds me another thing that the way we measure health was quite different, right? If you remember last time I learned in China, the success of the doctor is measured by the number of people who do not get sick, right? Now we have a different measure of success, right? So it should be a measure of how many people do not get sick. That's a good doctor.
Mestinya gitu.
And there's a Chinese philosophy. Right?
So I think your brother is reading all the same things that I'm reading, that these people are controlling. They're controlling big pharma, big agriculture. They're also controlling all the COVID vaccines.
They are.
Uh,
And you can imagine where he stands on the vaccine thing, right?
yeah. Yeah. So I was asking you what vaccine did you get? Is it Pfizer or Sinovac?
Sinovac.
Did you have a choice, or you chose it, or
I didn't have a choice. In fact, I was called. I have to be there in 10 minutes time from my home. I gotta come to USM in 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
okay.
Yeah, it was no the few more left. So I was called. It wasn't scheduled in fact. But then I was reading somewhere a report that Singapore has omitted Sinovac. Right. I don't know what that means though.
Yeah. So I mean, they have some sort of passport. So the Pfizer people can move around freely, and the people who had Sinovac, where they go somewhere, they still have to get scanned.
Okay.
So maybe the Pfizer people, maybe they can gather together, but the Sinovac people, will be limited in their movement.
I see.
So the Sinovac people who got Sinovac, they're very unhappy because they were not told before that.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Where's my brother? No. Let me get him again.
Oh, the loss.
Yeah. He should be. There's no problem with the connection over there. Oh God.
There is something
Where's
problem with.
You can rejoin. You can rejoin now because there's some problem over here. It was the glitch was on our side. Yeah. So you can rejoin. You can rejoin the Webex now. No, completely off just now. I think you were talking alone. Yeah. No. You just rejoin. I'll tell you where.
So what is happening with the Malaysian political today?
Oh.
My brother was still presenting just now, presenting to himself.
Unstable.
Still presenting.
Very unstable. You know what's going to happen tomorrow.
He's talking about.
Saya pikirnya beneran kayaknya
Sadar. What happened with the?
Oh, yes. I have another term for that, Musakir. Is that Indonesian of Malaysian politics. Because Malaysian parties have just learned how to do coalition government, right? Indonesia has been advanced, the abang, the big brother, very advanced in coalition government, right? So
There's not like the Golkars, when the Yusuf Kala elected as vice president in SBY period. At the time, Golkar not supported the SBY.
Golkar.
Okay.
Like
UMNO now. Yes. But you know, not all of UMNO also. Some yes, some no. Depending. So we have so Malaysians need to learn from Indonesia. How do you do coalition government? Right? And how do you be loyal but not loyal? And then loyal at the national level, but then different at the local level, right? At the state level is different, right? So it's not the only.
sorry, Reem.
Okay, sorry. Our glitch on this side. So
Okay.
the last you want to share your slide again? So
Yes, I'll share.
the last one was
I really
about.
don't know what have you.
I think the second slide. The second slide. We've seen your second slide.
Sorry.
Oh, you haven't joined the meeting yet. Okay.
I've joined. I've clicked the meeting, join meeting, but then I don't know what's happening now here.
Okay, you got to share the slide.
Okay. You already have one meeting in progress. You can join a new meeting after you have leave the previous meeting. I'm confused, one, John.
Okay.
Means that you're already here.
You're already in the. You have another tab somewhere, maybe. You have another.
So I'll share. I'll share my
Okay, go ahead, share. See whether you can share.
Here, I'm sharing my screen now. I have one previous meeting. I have one meeting in progress. You can join a new meeting after you have left. After you leave the previous meeting. What do you mean by that? Huh?
Okay. How about try leaving this meeting first? Is there? Yeah, I see you have two WebEx icons down there. You leave this meeting and rejoin the other meeting.
Leave meeting.
Leave. Okay. All right, we leave. I can't want to communicate. That's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not there. Oh. Okay. Okay. All right. While waiting for my brother to come in again, let me answer your question, Cha. Wondering besides inductive approach. If you say a case study will be fine, Chang. That the inductive approach is the approach. The case study is more of the method, right? So inductive approach can be in case study, can be used for grounded theory, can be used, that has to do with the logic itself. But the case study, case study is, if you want to be safe, you go case study. That's the safest of all methodology, because case study is.
How is it?
Okay, we got it. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, so I will share my my screen again.
Got it.
So I'm sharing the screen now. So how's it? Which slide do you want me to repeat again?
Second slide. I think we have second slide.
You saw intro. I've done intro, right? I explained intro.
Yes, you did. And you talk about how the world is being affected. Yeah. Current state. Yes. Okay.
Go back to God. How about going back to God?
Going back to God? No, we haven't gone back to God yet.
Okay, fine.
We're still planet Earth. Okay.
So I will take you to God. I'll take you to God now.
Okay, all right. Please do, guys. Okay. Current state.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's start again. So this is based on the research done by by Professor by this Associate Professor Benzen. So she did a study on Google search. So this before March, before the COVID event. This is before COVID. It was the prayer was 50% less compared to 50% more. 50% more compared to this is before. This is before COVID. Before COVID. This is during COVID. Yeah, this is during COVID. Sorry, this is during COVID. I better make my slides bigger so that I can see. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So that's yeah. And then also this is interesting because there's a lot of searches being made on COVID and prayers. This is interesting. Prayers. The Google search for prayers have increased by 1.3% compared to takeaways, and prayer as well have increased by 12% compared to Netflix. And more interestingly, that all of these searches are made by Muslims, by Christians and Muslims. And Christians are about 2 billion of the world population, and the Muslims are close to 2 billion as well, close to 2 billion. So this is 4 billion as compared to 7 billion of the world population. This is the world population. So this is more than 50%. It's about 60% here, I think. 40, 60, I think about 60%. Yeah, I think about more. I can't remember what was the percentage. I think it's more than 60%. Is that right? Is that right? 70, yeah. Maybe, yeah. Yeah. They have done a study to say that mostly Christians and Muslims are the one who does all these searches. Very interesting. As compared to, according to her, as compared to the Buddhists and Christian, and Hindus. So the Hindus and Buddhists, they don't revert to God, or rather they've got God in front of them. I'm not sure. They don't do any searches. They don't revert to God. There's not much searches from the Buddhist countries as well as the Hindu countries. Yeah. She has found out that if the country is poorer, more insecure, and then the searches will be more. There are a lot more searches. Interesting. They have done a study here as well that religion, only to religion that people manage to overcome adversity, overcome or cope with adversity. And in times of natural disasters, people flock to religion more. Okay. Then we go on to the next slide here. I'll do some erasing because this was before the line is now. This is interesting because I got the articles here. Are mainly from journals. So they are all peer review. Okay. So they found out that prayers can reduce diseases and also can reduce depression. This is a very interesting point. Yeah, peer review, and I'm sure it's also rigorous, right? With empirical studies and all that. Okay. This study here, they found out that through prayer can reduce terminal diseases, cancers and all that, cancer and other terminal diseases, cancer can reduce or alleviate lah. Yeah. Depression definitely can reduce. And this is an interesting point here that the effectiveness of prayer depends on the spirituality of the person. So I guess when it comes to Christians here, I guess if you are closer to church, C-H-U-R, church, then your prayer seems to be more accepted by God. I would say that because of the conviction, because we've got more conviction, therefore the acceptance, higher acceptance, because you've got more conviction. Because if you're more spiritual, the more spiritual the person is, the more conviction he has, and as well as the prayer will be tend to get more accepted by the superpower or by the Almighty. This is also interesting point here. We says that intercessory prayer, which means you pray for people. You are here. You pray for people in the hospital, right? And then you just give names to this group of people, and they just pray for you. You don't know the person. The person here don't know. You know what I mean? The person here who is a patient here wouldn't know who the prayers are. You know, this group of people, and they found out this intercessory prayer are really helpful. By the way, in the next few slides, I will also show that from the Muslim perspective, from the Islamic perspective here, that the higher you are spiritually, the more also effective your prayer are. Similarly, also with this one here, in Islam, there's hadith. Hadith means quotation from the Prophet. That if you pray for your brothers or sisters here, not in front of you, which are away from you, your prayer will be more accepted, because there's a special angel will say Amin, to your prayer. Dedicated angel will say Amin to your prayer, as well as the angel says that to you too. So it's good to pray for others, and because you are also included in the prayer as well. So over here, this slide talks about this slide. Mainly, there's no empirical study. There's no empirical study, because mostly I took it from books, with the exception of Jose Silva here. He has done studies. He has done some studies about the prayer that they do, the formation, a positive mental attitude. These are the things that they taught, especially in Jose Silva method. Visualization, the belief system, the actions and habits that we do to attract wealth. So here, Christians, apparently Christian in Dr. Joseph Murphy here, he was very famous in the 60s. He come up with affirmations. His book is all about affirmation, as well as by biblical. Also, he will be quoting some biblical verses from Bible. Right here, this is I got a book here on affirmation. Sorry. This one is this is phrases from the web. They've got prayers from the web as well, and this one also from the web. They've got special prayers from the web to attract, special prayers to attract wealth. These are special prayers to attract wealth. And for the non-religion, which is like silver mind control, the famous silver mind control. Then I've attended this course, silver mind control. Yeah, I've attended so many of these self-development course. They've got prayers where they've got formation mentally. Most of the time is mentally, right? And of course, silver mind control also stress a lot on positive mental attitude. So we should do a lot of self-talk, which are positive self-talk, right? As well as Hill. This is Napoleon Hill, Joseph Murphy, and also Bob Proctor, the famous Bob Proctor, on motivation, as well as he does a lot of talks and motivation talk to attract wealth. Okay. By doing visualization and imagination, so basically what they do is that they visualize wealth coming to us, or visualize the state, the future state of your being, wealthy, success already, So that's what they do in visualization. They visualize the end result.
What is it, right?
Okay, the end result. These are some of the habits and actions that will attract.
Not quite clear.
Health, our wealth. In the Bible, emphasize that we have got to do tithing at least 10% of your income. Right. Interesting. We don't have that one. Yeah. All right. Yeah. This is Islamic, so I'll touch on it. There's a parallel between Islamic as well as the conventional. I call this conventional or Christians, as well as Anthony Robbins. Here, Anthony Robbins mentioned that it's important to do tithing and to do charity work. To do charity work as well. And then we have got to control our needs and wants. Yeah. We have got to know what are our needs and what are our wants. You know, the needs are important. The wants are the bonus. Okay. Then go on to the next slide, which is from an Islamic perspective. So I've made references to hadith. When I say Tirmidhi here, these are all hadith. Hadith of Prophet. So the Prophet did taught us, the Muslim, on how to attract wealth, as well as to pay debts, So there's Abu Daud here. There's a doa. We call it doa. That could pay all your debts, settle all your debts. And I really don't know these poor people in Malaysia. I think that we should be teaching them how to catch fish, instead of giving them fish. So I consider the giving of fish is like giving them funds and all that, funds and aids and all that. By teaching them how to catch fish, by teaching them how to catch fish is like teaching them all this prayer. I don't think our scholars, existing scholars, ulama you see ulama here, are doing the job properly, in my opinion, because they should be teaching the masses, the Muslim community, of all these hadith. And also this is mentioned in Quran that if you decide istighfar, forgiveness, that abundance, you will get abundance in life. Abundance in life. It's mentioned in Quran, abundance in life. That God, Allah, will give you rivers, and it will increase your strength. Increase the providence that Allah gives. So all of this will be increase further. The Allah will set forth the rivers and fruits. You will bear more fruits. Fruits here can be interpreted in many ways. Fruits here can be the actual fruits, as in fruits, and also the success in projects and all that, all kinds. So over here, it's mentioned many times. There are three clear ayat of Quran. This is Surah Hud. Surah Hud, and this is Surah Nuh. Or Noah. I'm not sure the English equivalent to Hud. And then there's one zikir here, it's mentioned in Muwatta by Imam Malik, that if you to recite zikir, La ilaha illallahul malikul haqqul mubin, short one, 100 times a day, 100 times. Then your Allah Ta'ala, God, will provide you all of your, you have no problem on your risk. Risk here means providence. Is there anyone who's overseas here that I got to explain further? I'm not sure. It's too technical. I got to translate. So these are the habits to the same habit as well. The same habit as tithing as in Christian. This one is in Christian. This is Bible here. This Bible here. This is Christian. Right. Islam teaches that if you do tithing, this is zakat, or even charity or sedekah, sedekah. In Muslim, this is the number. This is the Muslim quoted Prophet by saying that sedekah. The Prophet said that sedekah will not make you poor. Will not make you poor. Sedekah will not make you poor. So the Prophet mentioned that several times actually in that hadith. But it will Allah will replace the amount that you sedekah, and even it can be even more. So that is the promise that the Prophet had made. And Muslim is a very strong. This is what you call authentic hadith. Or sahih. Authentic means sahih hadith, which is undisputable. Undisputable. Yeah, you can't dispute. And this is interesting as well. If you have silaturahim, or you forge a good family relation, because silaturahim here refers to family, not silaturahim here refers to family and not any person, not your friends, not anyone else, not anyone. Which means not your friends. Your friends, not really your friends. Right? So this is more of family members. So you forge family members, forge good relationship with family members, Allah Ta'ala will increase your providence, raise or display, and also Allah Ta'ala will increase your life. Your lifespan will increase. So these are two ways that you can increase your providence and your lifespan. Mentioned in authentic hadith, which is in Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari and Muslim are undisputed hadith. You can't dispute them. They are, in fact, Bukhari, they say that Bukhari, number one is Al-Quran, number two is Bukhari. In terms of the strength of the hadith. And then this is also interesting here, the saints. This one hadith here says that the saints here, which refers to this one here. It depends on this level of spirituality here. Level of spirituality. The more spiritual you are, the more the spiritual person is, the more that God will accept the prayer, acceptance of prayer because of the commission. So similarly also in Islam, we have got that concept as well. We have got the concept. I think I missed one point here, but I will go back to the one. So the higher the spirituality, the higher the chances that it will be accepted, the prayer will be accepted. I forgot one bullet here. This is like congregation. So if there's a jama'ah here, there's a jama'ah praying, they will be more effective. So jama'ah here can be the intercessory prayers, no? How is intercessory? There. Same concept as this one, no? Because normally when you do jama'ah, you do it not in front of the patient. Okay, and also there's a synergy here as well. Synergy in the prayer, so his prayer become more effective. It's by Muslim as well. So we go on to the Tariqa Muhammadiyah, Ahmadiyah. The Tariqa itself is known to be the Tariqa of prayers because all of the Tariqa are mainly, majority of it, I would say more than 95% or 98%. More than 95 or 98% are all about prayers. A lot of the litanies, and the prayers and the litanies are based on prayers, based on dua. And Tariqa Ahmadiyah, Muhammadiyah, I call it TMA. In short, it's called TMA. I call it in short, it's TMA for short form. TMA is also known to be the Tariqa of end times. So let's go through the bullet points here. It's founded by Ahmad bin Idris. The word H here is Ahmad, you spell it Ahmad with an H, Ahmad bin Idris. Died in 1837, after which there is no more tariqat, no more new tariqat after him, after this. No, there's no tariqat. All tariqat ends with the tariqat Ahmadiyah or tariqat Muhammadiyah, TMA here. And surprisingly, it has got huge followers and influence in Saudi, Yemen, Libya, Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Sudan. Big following in Sudan. Now, existing now. In now, in Egypt, big following. Libya used to be big following until Gaddafi came in. When Gaddafi came in, he doesn't like that tariqah. He brought another new tariqah came because in Libya, interesting. I just want to highlight this. In Libya, the king, the monarch in Libya was called As-Sanusi. As-Sanusi. So As-Sanusi is a follower. He is a follower of Tariqat Ahmadiyah. Yeah, Sanusi. So the name of this tariqat is also called As-Sanusi. Another name for this tariqat is called Sanusia or Idrisia. Another place in Egypt is called Idrisia. In Libya it's called Sanusia. So when Gaddafi came in, he doesn't want the king. He doesn't like the tariqah. He doesn't want the king, so he brought a new tariqah in by Shah and others in order to dilute the Sanusi influence. So here. Coming back to the modern day. The influence is very strong in Egypt, very strong in Sudan, very strong in Malaysia, very strong in Brunei. Not so much in Indonesia, but also in Singapore, yes. Thailand, yes, a bit. He has gone to Cambodia as well. Italy, very, very surprising. Italy, it is very strong in Italy. And Yugoslavia, a bit. That's why, because from the Italians brought over to Yugoslavia. Right? So Ahmad bin Idris, the founder here, says that he got this tariqah directly from the Prophet. So when you say directly from the Prophet here, it's not from dream, but more of he could see the Prophet in terms of just like avatar, just like what you call it, hologram, just like hologram. So he could see. So spiritual people who are very very high spiritually, they could see the Prophet from in a hologram form, spirit form. This is mentioned in Imam Ghazali as well, in his Imam Ghazali, in his famous book, Ihya Ulumuddin, that when a person reached a certain level of spirituality, he could see spirituality to spiritual. Why can't I write? A person reaches a certain level of spirituality, then he could see the spirits, the raw or spirits or prophets. So over here, Said Ahmad, he claimed that he has seen the Prophet, and all of his all of his what you call it, all of his prayers, litanies, wirid are all taken from the Prophet, So this is according to Sir Ahmad bin Idris, according to Ahmad or Ibn Idris, he said this is his specialty. This is his specialty, which are not given to others, not given to other saints. He got this direct from the Prophet, and sometimes when there are prayers and all that, the Prophet will comment will comment or even edit the prayer. Say that, okay, take this one, no take this one, and or do addition, this sort of thing. Okay? So that's what he claimed. This is a tariqat of dua, prayers, because at times, as I said, more than 90% or 95% are all about prayers. And then, okay, these are all by Mak Saleh, guys. These are all by Mak Saleh. Most of them are from Norway. These are all Norwegian scholars. These are all mainly Norwegian, except for this man. He's from US lah. I've spoken to him when I communicated with him previously. So yeah. So let's move on. Done with this bullet. And then this is interesting. Why I say that this is the tariqah of end time? This is the tariqah of end time because Said Ahmad bin Idris said, he swear by Allah, he swear. This is what he swear. So whenever a saint swears, so it's like really big, it's a big thing. You know what I mean? He swear by Allah, all creations will embrace my tariqat during end time. It's a famous quote from him. It's interesting to say that all creations will see lah. We'll see about it. And then he says that my tariqah is the essence of all happiness. So you want to be happy? Take my tariqah. You know what I mean? Okay, let's move on. So let's move on. How many more slides? I'm not sure how many more slides. Good. Anyway, let's move on. So these are some of the prayers, litanies and all that. Hizbul Saifi, or it's called litany of sword, 40 pages, because literally you can like cut across. This sword is a magical sword. It's a magical sword that you can cut and you can get success in your life, success in your career, success in your finance, success in relationships, success in diseases and all that. All that will be, you pray for not getting diseases, etc. It's a long prayer because it's for 14 pages. It's a very long prayer, guys. Very comprehensive. It's comprehensive. But I would like to share as well this Hizbul Saifi here and Hizbul Munimi are not only practiced by Tariqat Muhammadiyah Ahmadiyah, but also practiced by Qadariyah, another Sufi order, Qadariyah, and also by Tijaniyah. So this Hizbul Saifi, Hizbul Munimi are also being practiced by other tariqat. Qadariyah is about let me see, about 1,000 years old. It's 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago. Tijaniyah is relatively new. It's about is contemporary. It's Ahmad bin Idris, contemporary of Sayyid Ahmad bin Idris. It's about let's say about 200 years ago. And you got to see the difference between their version, Tijaniyah and Qadariyah. There's a slight improvement in the Hizbul Saifi Hizbul that the Tariqah Muhammadiyah Ahmadiyah that is they are reciting or they are practicing. So Hizbul Munimi, I would consider Hizbul Munimi here to be, if this is the sword, this is the shield. And it's taken, by this one Hizbul Munimi here is by Uwais Qarni. Uwais Al-Qarni. There's Uwais Qarni here. The Prophet say here, he is the best. He is the best of all tabi'in. Tabi'in here, we have got tabi'in here. What I mean is that those who met the Sahaba or the companions of the Prophet. So he did not, but not see the Prophet. So the Prophet says that he is the best tabi'in. Although he has not met the Prophet. He has not met the Prophet. Okay, it's a big long story, so I will leave it as that. And then here, Al-Usul Mania Nabawiyah, this is about 8 pages long. unconquerable castle of the prophet, or sometimes invincible. Invincible. So if you have a castle, which is this castle here, that nobody can penetrate, it's very powerful. So over here in Al-Usul here, we talk about all kinds of diseases, so that you ward off yourself from all kinds of diseases, and mention blindness, blind, death, what you call it, you become mad, for all kinds of chronic diseases, chronic, yeah, serious chronic, I put serious there, serious chronic diseases, all kinds, and including if you take a break from the kings, from the bad kings, these are diseases from kings, sultan, these are bad sultans, even your bosses as well, bosses, the bad bosses, you know what I mean? Because not all bosses are good. In this life, we don't have good bosses around. And we have got, including the pandemic as well, pandemic. Because there's one prayer, the prayer here is called from all kinds of hama. Hama means viruses, no? If you translate in the modern translation, hama. Okay? So, and you are protecting this, you are protecting all of this for yourself, for your family, for your close relatives, for your relatives, and also here for your children. So here you're making prayer, you're making protection, you're making protection, you're creating a castle over all of this, and you're protecting yourself and your wealth as well. Yeah, your wealth, powerful, your wealth, protecting yourself, your wealth, your body. These are all diseases, but these are the kings and all that. I put one in the category, kings, bosses, and all that. From the robbers and all that. It's mentioned on the word in the prayer. We mentioned all that names, etc. And from jinns, we got jinns as well now, right? Jinns, black magic, etc., etc. So let's move on. And then there's a special prayer for Yalatif. Yalatif is a special prayer whereby special prayer to attract. This is a special prayer to attract wealth. So in this prayer, even God, Allah Ta'ala have got 99 names. Allah Ta'ala have got 99 names. Ya Latif, one of them is Ya Latif. Ya Latif. And the word Ya Latif here means subtle. Subtle. Where is it? Ya Latif. The subtle. The one who is subtle. So basically, you are actually subtle. Lemah lembut. Lemah lembut means people are soft towards you. Soft and easy. So by reciting the word Ya Latif, people and the world will be soft and easy towards you, towards the person. And there's a special prayer after that as well. There's a special prayer that comes along with that. Ahzab is a must before we proceed on with his Bumuni and Al-Usul here. Because without Al-Ahzab, this is actually the strength of the Tariqa that gives you this. It's just like going to the gym. You need to go to the gym before you can hold on to the heavy sword. You have got to be very strong to hold, to manage, to maneuver the sword. Okay. And then we've got the 8 insomnia. 8 insomnia here, there are 4 pages. So here is over here. This is actually praising God, or being thankful to God for all the ni'mat, for all the blessings, that He gave us. We thank Him. So there's about 4 pages here, very long pages there. And finally, there's one great prayer, prayer of forgiveness, or it's called Istighfar al-Kabir. So here, the Istighfar al-Kabir here is actually, where is this thing? Where is this thing now? I'm sorry about this. I can't miss it.
So we got to move along faster. Now it's 12 something now. 12:05.
Okay. I move forward fast now. Yeah, I can. We are about to end already.
Yeah,
We're about to end. Yeah, we're about to end. So okay, fine. So I move on. So this is the seven spiritual development. Why I put this one in is because the more spiritual the person is, the other way around. The more the spiritual, the more one person is what I call it, his prayer will be accepted. Okay. So I'll move on fast. So these are the spiritual development of the person, right? There is mentioned here in the Quran. We've got the lowest here, which are the common people, which are very greedy, proud, demanding. So these are very common, the commoners. The commoners take revenge, like most politicians, they like to take revenge from one another. A lot of hatred among the politicians, and all of this hypocrisy among the politicians and all that. And then we go on to the next level, and the next spiritual level, and the next spiritual. It will take years or even decades to move on from one level to another. And the highest level is this one here. You're contacted, your ikhlas. Not many people have got this ikhlas and sincere in doing things, etc. This is the highest. These are when these are the level of spirituality for those who are the prophets. The prophets, the messengers, and top-notch saints. Okay, so I will move on here. This is where EQ, SQ, and all that are related. Are related to me. So I will. This is the wealth status. I took it. This one here. For my brother's book as well as from my sister-in-law's book. Basically, the status is what we are calling, and as well as Robert Kiyosaki, the famous Robert Kiyosaki and Anthony Robbins here. I've got others as well, but I don't quote over here because of lack of time. Basically, we want to check whether we want to see the financial, the wealth status, financial independence in terms of trust fund. Here, trust fund here is ASB and other trust funds, Tabung Haji and other trust funds. So for Malays, these are the two. Real estates, whether they have got any real estate, any businesses. So these are all passive. This one here, passive income. Passive income. This one here, this wealth status this is my DV. All of these up here are all my IV. So I will go on to this one later. So when it comes to
explain the word DV and IV.
Job loss or not?
Reza, explain what DV and what IV.
Here. It's in my chart. Theoretical framework.
Okay, but DV stands for dependent variable.
I will explain when you come to here lah. Okay, fine. I'll move on fast. Here, this is all of these are repetition here. All of these stats, folks. All of these stats here are just a repetition again. That that the government has spent and COVID-19 have created havoc and all that, but still rakyat are reverting back. The people in Malaysia are reverting back to religion and spirituality, and the Tariqa Muhammadiyah can be, which is known to be the essence of happiness, may be the answer. So this is the reason why I'm doing this research. So this is the theoretical framework. This is my ID. So I'll blow this one out.
We cannot see that. Okay, all right.
Okay, fine. If you can't see it, I will. I'll go on to this one here. This is my theoretical framework, which is maybe clearer. How's that? Can you see it now?
Okay, better now. Yeah.
Better. So this is my theoretical framework here, which is this is a small, which are divided into. This is the IV, this is my IV, and this is my DV.
Okay.
So
what you want to say is IV. Maybe people do not understand what IV. Independent variable.
This is my independent variable. Independent variables, right? And then this is my dependent variable. Basically, I want to check. I want to study whether the state of wealth of the self, the spouse, the children, the parents, and siblings. Right? So these are the IB again. So this is the IB. The IB is the spiritual development of the person. And then, so these are, oh, hang on, sorry. Why can't I write? Hang on. I'll write again. This is my IB here. This is my IB. Number one is the spiritual development of the person. Number two, these are some of the practices like tithing and all that. Tithing, sedekah, that comes under here, sedekah.
Here, where's here? We do not know where's here.
Pardon, sorry?
We can see. I can see naps, a lot, napsu there, but we cannot see. You haven't expanded it, so we.
Which one?
There. Okay, now we can see. But what
basically this one here relates to the one which I've explained above lah. All the various now, the 7 nafs.
Okay, alright.
This is a top notch. This is the commoners lah. These are meant for the commoners and majority of the politicians.
Right, alright.
The commoners and people like everywhere. These are nafs amara. And then this is some of the practices, example sedekah and all that, which are in the book, which are in the Tariqa Muhammadiyah.
I cannot see the practices.
Sorry.
I cannot see.
I can't see this one.
Where's the practices?
Here. Can you see this one here?
No, I see F1, I see RSRM.
Okay. So RSIM. So this one here is actually RSIM is actually the row. I'll explain over here. These are book which Salma have written. It's called Roh Sunnah and Roh Nufusul Mutmainah. What it means is that Roh Sunnah means the spirit. Sunnah itself, the Sunnah itself, there are so many Sunnah. There's so many Sunnah. So this is spirit of Sunnah. This one here, they have got 200 hadith. There are 200 hadith here. These 200 hadith are the spirit of Sunnah. It's not essence of Sunnah, it's the spirit. As well as the spirit of you being nufusul mutmainah, tranquil self. So if you want to be tranquil self, you have got to practice these 200 hadith, especially, or the main hadith. And then we have got this another book written by Salma Bidris called Qamiyah al-Yaqeen, or is I call it certainty of the chemistry of certainty. Chemistry of certainty. So this only Qamiyah al-Yaqeen are where the positive mental attitude, the belief system, are all here. So basically this is the philosophy, belief system, the philosophy behind you being rich. If you want to be rich, you must have, or when you want to have a lot of wealth, you must have this one here. You must have conviction, full conviction in God. So these are some of these are the spiritual. Then we go on to the spiritual practices. The 3. This is number 3 here. Spiritual practices here are all of the one which I've explained above here in the slides. Hizbul Saifi, Al-Husun, Ahzab, Tahlil, Yaratif, etc. So these are the degree of spiritual practices of the Ikhwan. When I say Ikhwan here, is the adherents of Tariqa Muhammadiyah Ahmadiyah. Okay, and then here is when I want to check all the I want to study the self, the spouse. Each one of these are our set. Sorry. I will hang on. I'll go back to my slides. Fast. Here I'll go there. So here the study is about here. Wealth status, the wealth status of the self, the spouse, the parents, children, as well as the siblings. So the questionnaire will be asking each and every one of them all of this. But the person that we are asking is the ikhwan, the self. Okay, but let me continue with framework again. So that I need to ask your opinion on this. Here. So these three components, which is the spiritual self or spiritual development here, the spiritual development here, number one, and then also the how much the belief system as well as the practices. These are some of the practices. Effect, or it has relationship on the wealth. 1, 2, 3, 4. With the mediator. This is the mediator here. I put a question mark here because the more family members who are adherents of Tariqa Ahmadiyah Muhammadiyah, the stronger should be, or the more stronger should be the effect, and the more effect, the more the more success that you get. So this is my theoretical framework, but I will need to ask you again on this, because if this is sufficient, if 1, 2, and 3 is sufficient, in 3 is sufficient, then I don't want to put the mediator, because mediator means I'm going to do extra work. Extra survey lah. Extra work. So let's move on. I think I've got about one more slide to go. Yeah, I got one more slide to go. So we've done that. We're done with my theoretical. Then we've got one or two slides. I know one slide. This is the last slide. And then we go on to research methodology here. I'll plan to use PLSM. Why? Because this is a exploratory research, and also the normality of the sample is questionable as well, and also we'll be testing the theoretical framework from the prediction, because it's exploratory. My coverage, I plan to do in Selangor, in KL, and then maybe in Negeri Sembilan. And Negeri Sembilan, yes, definitely Negeri Sembilan, because everything will be online. Now online, right? Sample size, I'm planning to take 2,000, which is about 1% accuracy. Contour group, I put question mark here whether I need to have a contour group. That's it. That's all my presentation. I put conclusion here. I mean, like discussion lah. It's more like discussion. Awaiting your input, Reeza.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that very long standard presentation. Okay, for research proposal, what we want to know is the introduction, the background, the research problem, the theoretical framework, the methodology. That's something that the research problem here. What is the research problem? If I were to ask that question.
Research problem is here.
What is the research problem? Well, you got the research problem?
Stop.
Right.
What is it? Okay, what is this? Okay, but you are explain again. This is the I'm not sure it's clear. The research problem here.
So basically COVID-19 have caused a lot of problems and unemployment to the world. And these are all the unemployment to the world. And the people have been reverting back to religion and spirituality. So Tariqat Muhammadiyah can be or could be the answer to the religion and spirituality, as well as to attract wealth.
Okay.
To attract and preserve wealth.
Alright, that's the essence of the research problem.
Yeah.
Problem statement. Okay. So that's not a research problem, that's not a problem statement per se. So what we want to have is a theoretical, a conceptual problem. So we want to say the whole idea is to find a problem that you want to that exists, that has not been explained by the literature or the studies, the current theories or studies. And that is something. So that is, you want to problematize it that way, or a phenomena that has not been explained. That is what you're going. But if you're going deductive, because you want to do deductive, so this is where we want to do methodology. Then we want to think about the research question. This is the flow is like that. So you want to do that, then we got to identify what is the vacuum out there, right? That is
okay. I understand. Okay. Vacuum.
So it's a vacuum that's not been explained.
Yeah.
That's not in the literature. What is that? So that needs to come first. So that so it's not clear here. You know, if you're talking about it, you're framing it as a happiness cure for happiness, or happiness literature, happiness discourse. There's literature on happiness, and there's happiness index. In fact, I think World Bank is that one as well. So
I'm not there.
You're not, okay? So you're in fact, you're reverting back to wealth. I can understand. So that's another point. You're going wealth as your dependent variable, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you want wealth dependent variable. So if you look at wealth as a dependent variable, then a few things there that you must take note. Take note of what are the theories that explain about wealth, that predict wealth, that explains about wealth. So you got to look at those theories, and you say, okay, what's missing about these theories?
Sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, but my theory is based on prayer.
Okay, so this is my
theory.
This is where it becomes important, because I think you're putting the methodology ahead of the research questions. Right. The underlying objective here is to prove the power of Tariqa Muhammadiyah, right?
Yes.
That's the whole idea, right? That's the whole idea. Okay, that's the underlying motive, you know, right? So you're finding what is easy way out to prove that, right? So if you're talking, so we want to find a manageable PhD project to menyerlahkan, to manifest, to show the manifestation of Tariqat Muhammadiyah, right? To show that there is a link between prayers in the form of this tariqat, the tariqat prayers, right? And some measure of success, or some measure of happiness, some measure an externalization, right? That you can measure of some aspects of quality of life. So it could be wealth, it could be health, it could be something. So you want to find that one, right? So, if you want to find that one, you want to go the reverse way, then it cannot exist in a vacuum. If you do it deductively, it cannot exist in a vacuum. You must find vacuum here in the sense of literature, vacuum. So you got to find. You know what I mean?
I want to say here that under Tariqat Muhammadiyah, most of the literatures we are all about historical. It is about what you call it? It's about historical. It's about mainly historical. It's about a biography, as well as literature review. There's also written about the wirid, the dua, the prayers.
Okay, got that.
The prayers.
That has to do with the literature of the tariqat, right?
Yeah, this is literature about the Tariqa.
So now so whenever you take something as independent variable, so there must be literature about the independent variable. Especially if you're making a linkage between the dependent variable and the independent variable.
Correct.
Right. So you say, I'm studying health, and there's a prayer that you can perform to
understand. Okay,
so you got to look.
There should be wealth here now. So this is not enough. I mean, I've got to expand this one for more lah. Where is it? This one here. The wealth here. The wealth here. I've got to expand it. The wealth status. I've got to expand this one more, right?
So you got to look at expand. You got to look at the wealth literature and find what theories about wealth that exist out there that has not been explained about wealth. Because you're doing deductive right now. Deductive research is about, you say, you do this, you get this. You do this, you get this, right? That's what basically you want to establish lah.
Yeah, but then when you talk about this one here, there's a literature, there's not much more, is it? This study, you cannot really study that person have been making prayer and get money, you know what I mean or not? There's no literature on that. Hang on, where is it? Here. Is it here? Where is the Here, right? There's a lot. You cannot really say that. Oh yeah, you have done this prayer and you get money. You know what I mean? Or you have done this visualization and you get money. Or you have done, there's no literature review on that. There's no literature review on that.
Okay.
Because you're talking about Bob Proctor, mind control.
Okay. This is this is the way you got to show the literature. So the problem statement must show what is missing theoretically, that has not been explained before. So you got to show that, right?
Right. And
if you say deductive, and if you say that, to be wealthy, there are other literatures that talk about how to be wealthy, right? So you got to capture those literature as well. Okay. All right.
Understand.
Okay. Get that point. So and then there are a lot of banyak literature about talking about how to become wealthy.
Banyak.
Right.
A lot.
But you want to find literature that has scientific evidence lah. If you talk about
problem,
scientific evidence, we are not talking about Bob Proctor kind of literature. We are not talking. Tak boleh. Not even the book I wrote is not evidence based. It's motivational strategy. Do it yourself.
Tak ada.
No, those
literature review on visualization ada. This one here, visualization on.
Listen to what I'm saying first.
Okay.
Alright. So you got to. So we take independent variable right now. Go back. The independent variable is about wealth, right? So you got to capture the literature on wealth.
Great.
Right? The discourse on wealth, right? And then you say, what are the discourse of wealth? You explain this. There are 5 theories about how to become wealthy, right? And there's scientifically studies on becoming wealthy, right? You got to capture the studies, right? And then you say, it's not 5 lah, it's more, probably like 50 or 500. I do not know lah, but then there are paradigms of becoming wealthy, and there's studies on that. We are not talking about Bob Proctor type, not talking about Anthony Robbins type, not talking about probably closer to Warren Buffett type studies. So if you invest in this, there's studies about the type of investment, the stocks that you invest, the chances of your ROI is higher, and probably there is probably one type lah. Tapi there are many type of different wealth literature lah. Yang tu kena capture. And then you got to show there's a vacuum in that wealth literature, right? Bukan terbalik kan? It's like, what's the vacuum of Tariqa literature? That's a different story lah. Now we are talking about wealth being independent literature. wealth being independent variable. So wealth has to be the center. Wealth, because you're doing deductive, right? So wealth is you're concerned about how to become wealthy, right? So you need to capture the theories about that, right? So or literature or studies about that, right? So that's what you're going to show. That's one. And then we look at the theoretical framework of this whole thing again. The theoretical framework will need to include, in order to make it a strong theoretical framework, need to include a contending hypothesis as well. Meaning, since we are doing deductive research, there are contending theories about becoming wealthy, right? Or you got to show that the research design, how are you conducting this research design. It cannot be something that we come up and then just carry out the research just like that. It must exist in a theoretical or conceptual context. There are debates about becoming wealthy, and then you got to bring those debates or theories into hypotheses, and then operationalize them into variables, into dependent variables. So those will be contending dependent variables to being wealthy.
So you're referring to investment, the something,
whatever literature to become wealthy, banyak lah literature to become wealthy. So there's a lot there. So you got to capture that, because being wealthy is your independent variable, right? You got to capture that. But if you're doing adaptive research, you just memekarkan, you just opening up and say what manifestations you get. That's a different story. But here you are boxing what wealth is, right? Unless you interpret what wealth, you say, okay, wealth means berkat. It doesn't matter whether you get 10 million. What's important is that you get that money, but the money gives you happiness. The money gives you well-being. The money gives you free time. Money gives you, that's berkat interpretation, the berkat, the blessed wealth, right? That is a different interpretation of wealth, right? So then you got to expand the interpretation of that dependent variable. So that it depends. You need not be having a datuk and have a datukship and have a lot of money. You could be a major, a pilot, but have a lot of berkat and play golf every day, right? You know what I'm saying there? You can be a teacher and still have berkat, have a good life, instead of a headmaster having a headache, right? It's different kind of wealth. A wealth of the, that maybe that's what the Tariqa can bring you, the different kind of berkat, right? You do not need to be a director of a center, a dean of the school. You can be a lecturer and still have a little garden, and you can tend the little garden. That might be a berkat as well. So different ways of wealth. So is this how you want to measure the power of Tariqat Muhammadiyah? You got to go back to that one. You got to go back to that one, Amazah. If your real reason of doing this is to show the power of Tariqat Muhammadiyah, then is this the way you want to show it? So you got to go back to that one, so because you have wealth as independent variable, then you got to operationalize it. A dependent variable, So you got to operationalize it. You see what I mean?
Pardon?
You you got what I'm saying now, right? So
Yes, I
the,
think,
what,
yeah.
at
But
what
I
level?
still have got. But how, I just mentioned just to ask you again. This one is okay, right? This is okay, right? This is okay. This
Which
is
one
okay.
is
This is
okay?
okay, right?
It's not okay. Yeah. The theoretical framework is not okay. You got to, the problem statement is not okay. You got to come up with a problem statement that justifies this research.
Yeah, but this is the gap that I mentioned to you. It's not that
You haven't proven the gap
that
yet. You haven't.
yeah, I understand.
You haven't
Because
shown the gap.
as I said, as I said, it's not the studies, the literature review, the studies on Tariqa Ahmadiyah mainly on biography, you know what I mean? Biography, their history, as well as the about the wirid lah, the wirid translations of the wirid and all
Oh,
that.
that's not the gap.
That's correct.
The gap is in the wealth because you're studying independent variable. You're not studying dependent variable.
I'm studying this one, right? I'm studying this one here, right?
So you're making a theorizing on what can Tariqat Muhammadiyah affect on people's life
Correct.
vis-a-vis wealth.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
You're doing that research. So
Correct.
so the wealth part of the research is not there. That is the vacuum.
Oh, okay. You're saying that wealth, okay. But then over here, I want to see, I want to study what they have. You know what I mean? For the finance, whether they have investments. Here, this is where I ask them.
Yeah. So
investments. So maybe this one should be here. This box should be here.
This one, that one, this one, that one. Which one?
So here, over here, I'll be asking asking them about the investments, the funds, you know, the trust funds, right? IASB.
Okay.
They've got their business, other businesses. So over here, then I would say that, oh yeah, there are businesses, investments, other investments, etc. Here, this is where I ask them.
Yeah, but okay. Maybe there's a miscommunication here. What do you mean? You're gonna ask about finance, right? Those are operationalizing the wealth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask them. I'll ask all of this.
Yeah.
The job.
Okay.
The job, whether they have the job, house.
Yeah.
The house, car. You know what I mean? Expenses. These are expenses, right? Expenses, these are expenses. Other expenses. Others,
asset, liability, expense.
Asset, liability. So this is where I will ask this one man here, this one person here, and I will ask him what is his estimation of the spouse. Because you wouldn't know the detail about the children and all that. You wouldn't know the detail about what your children have. But you can guess. You can make some guess about their finance. But their job is an engineer, for instance. They can make a guess already that the income that they're getting is about so much per annum. And then the investment, I know that he or she has got ESB here, you know what I mean? Etc. And that's all. The investment here, the real estate.
Okay, so what's the point there?
The point is that this is where I'll ask them as well, the state of wealth here.
Okay.
I think this one here should be here. You know what I mean? I think this one should be here.
Why is it an issue whether that's on the left or right? What's the issue with that?
Because this will also be the independent variable.
Huh? The wealth could be independent variable.
Cannot. The wealth is the dependent
variable, right? So you're looking at how independent variable can relate, impact, influence, change dependent variable, right? You're doing combination, you're doing you're looking at the connection between those two, right? So you're measuring them, right? Even measuring it is also it must be what is it? Must be based on literature. So what is the measure of wealth, right? So you got to go. Those things need to be established, which means that
PLSM lah, to measure and all that.
Then there's issue of there's issue of just the statistical calculation. Now we are talking about the
okay. I think I'm going. So in terms of funds, how much here? How much funds are you supposed to have? ESB, how much here? The minimum, whatever lah. Finance, the job.
Hold on. So there are few points, and then that's reverse balik, go back to what we've been talking just now. First of all, is the vacuum in the wealth literature. So you got to identify. Right. So what is not being explained in the current literature vis-a-vis wealth, right? And then you got to lead that way and say, well, somehow there is no connection, there is no literature that explains between prayer and wealth, for instance. More specifically, there is no literature that explains how a Sufi order can affect one's wealth. For instance. And you got to establish that fact, right? And then why is that relevant? You got to should have a discussion on that one, and then you got to look at contending hypothesis, contending theories about what determines wealth, right? So it might not be prayer; it can be whatever else, education level. It could be financial literacy. It could be a financial plan. It could be a financial mentor. It could be So all those things, might be, but it must be based on literature. And then one that's established, you can say, well, one of the vacuum is actually prayer or connection to God or something that can make Tariqat Muhammadiyah as a subject of study that is relevant to fill the vacuum in the literature vis-a-vis wealth. Right. So that needs to be established. Not the reverse. The reverse is saying, let me see about Tariqat Muhammadiyah. What has not been said about it yet? Okay, I want to fill up the gap there. That is not connecting to the literature of the wealth. So you want to connect to the literature of the wealth right now, right? In the dependent variable, which is the focus. The focus is dependent variable right now, right? So that is the now. One that is established, you got to look at wealth as a variable. So you got to operationalize wealth. So you got to operationalize wealth based on the literature. And you can say the literature says, but I want to look at something beyond that. Or you say, oh, that's enough. I want to take this measure, right, as a measure of wealth. That you need to justify as well. Either you take existing one, or you expand existing one to include some other things. That needs to be justified as well.
Berkat apa semua here, this is where it is lah, right?
Yeah, but then you put in berkat, you got to operationalize berkat lah. Right? And this is where I say, this is my critique often of deductive research strategy. Is boxing people to a certain categories only. Apalagi dengan Tariqat Muhammadiyah, it can manifest in different ways. Right? The rich man in the kampung that practices Tariqat Muhammadiyah might be quite different than the rich man who stays in Al-Ustaz, right? So it can be the rich is different rich. So that's where the problem of deductive research there. But if you want to do that, it's okay, but then you got to stick to the methodological discipline of deductive research, which means any operationalization must be justified by current literature. If not, you got to show that there might other aspects of current literature that is not there that you must include, and it's justifiable. Right. So if you talk about berkat as a measure of wealth, how do you measure that? And how do you measure that? What is it? What is berkat? And how do you measure berkat?
Yeah.
And does it mean that the person doesn't fall sick? Does it mean that what? Because falling sick costs money, there's or he works just as a clerk, but then he can build a house at the end, and he can support 2 other families. Is that berkat? Or the measure is net worth. Is that berkat? Or one person has a datuk sheep or tone sheep, but then the family is kucak-kacir, right? One becomes, has identity crisis. The other one, whatever. What's the measure of that? So you operationalize it. Operationalize it. But then we are talking about wealth now. You got to talk wealth. We're not talking about health now. We're not talking about family relations. We're not talking about happiness. We're talking about wealth here. Because if you identify that as a, so that's the thing that needs to be improved. About PLSM and all that, that is just a tool. Just like people say, my research methodology is using NVivo. That is not research methodology. That is a tool. It's a software. And I know that in management, people tend to be slightly doing I'm saying this right, but then people do, people employ different standards. But my supervision, the standard is the PhD standard, right? So sorry, I'm a bit arrogant about that, but I think we should maintain that standard,
Okay.
right? And then this is a standard that you can go war with. So it's not strong. We're going strong. So at the end, when we go Viva, it's unshakable. Definitely we win the war and then we go to the battle. That's the strategy. So we want to bring this to a level that is strong. Right. So I'm not against the idea of doing this deductively, but we got to be very clear and systematic and strong when we do it deductively.
Right.
Deductive work, deductive research is tough at the beginning. It's easy at the end. Deductive, because you're solving a lot of operational theoretical problem at the beginning, and then towards the end you're collecting data, and then that's a different thing, right? But it has strength and limitation. The limitation, as I said, this now, right? How do you measure berkat, right? How do you measure that? And then the other part to this is this: some people, they might not want to have a lot of income because that income is associated with a lot of headaches and a lot of other problems or ethical problems for that matter, right? They say, well, I'm happy to become a teacher, but I do not need to become a headmaster, but teacher can have a lot of wealth too. I'm happy becoming a clerk, but I can build a house and support 2 other families, right? So there's that's something that you want to think about, lah. So I think the strength of that, my personal thought is that the strength of Tariqa Muhammadiyah, or strength of Tariqa is that it gives that spiritual strength or capital to interpret one's life in a much more peaceful, holistic manner, depending on the type of tariqat, depending on the type of order, right? So, and the concept of order, the concept of tariqat exists in all, I'm not sure about all religions, but many religions, right? Right, and like the Catholics have one order, the Jesuits order. The order is about not choosing wealth or poverty, not choosing. It's just about struggle. The Jesuits' path is the path of what is it? Of pursuing spreading the religion, being on a mission and spread. If you need to become a doctor, you become a doctor. If you need to become poor, you become poor. As long as you spread the religion effectively. The one's vocation, meaning your one's profession, is secondary to one's mission. So the order in the Jesuitic order is a powerful order that can spread religion very, very quickly. It's the type of order that brings Christianity to Latin America. Right? They become, because a lot of the Jesuits are doctors. Jesuits are, they are, and they are in the frontiers of spreading religion. So that's the interpretation of that order. So I think Tariqa Muhammadiyah. What is Tariqa Muhammadiyah? Is the Tariqat akhir zaman, the end zaman, end of times Tariqat, right? So it is adaptive to the new modern era, the new modern challenges, right? And if it's claimed to be a tariqat of all, right, then it needs to have that diversity of strength and diversity of interpretation of spirituality into many aspects of life in different walks of life. So if that is to be demonstrated through this research, and then you need to think of how to do that. But I agree to your approach of if you're doing deductive, it's good to do not all dimensions of life, wealth or health or happiness, or take one measure and focus on that one. Otherwise, it will be difficult. Right. Personally, my thought is for a tariqat of this sort, of akhir zaman, of the masses, then it's much better to let the manifestations be conveyed by the social actors themselves, right? Then you have a theory of wealth or wealth creation, for instance, right? That would be my thought. Right? But that is be changing it to much more qualitative type research, and that's my thought. Okay, guys,
Okay. Yeah.
So the
Thank you.
okay, but the measures need to be dependent on the theorizing. That's the part. Okay. Apa lagi I wanted to say just now?
Thank you.
The statistical instrument can be later on. You don't have to worry that much yet at this point, because you could use a simple correlation. It's fine as well, right? It doesn't. And remember one thing: if you're doing deductive research, falsification as a principle is important. Falsification. It's a deductive research is about falsification, right? So you need to allow that logic of falsification, that it can be proven that Tariqat Muhammadiyah doesn't work with wealth.
What is it again?
Falsification. You watch the YouTube talk about the inductive falsification. Deductive research is about falsification. You must allow for space in the findings to show that the hypothesis can be negated, can be nullified, can be That's why we've got there's 9 hypotheses, right? The whole philosophy of it is to show that there can be proof that the theory is not right, that the correlation is not there. In fact, oftentimes you want to show that, oh yes, the hypothesis has been rejected. That's actually a good thing. But strangely, when I see a lot of management thesis and all that presentation, when the hypothesis get rejected, they are sad. But that's not the whole logic of deductive research. Deductive research, the critical rationalism is about to be critical of that theory, to be critical of that. That's why what I'm saying, I'm suggesting to you is to have contending theories in there. What other explanations can there be in becoming wealthy, right? So if you have an explanation about maybe explanation about old money, people come from wealthy family, continue to be wealthy, but you can show that, well, Tariqa Muhammadiyah, not necessarily. The rich can become poor, right? Because they do not have spiritual core, whatever, yeah. Or the poor can become rich by having this tariqah, right? But you need to incorporate other theories into the theoretical framework. So you can have multiple hypotheses and which you can reject theory A, reject theory B, reject theory C, whatever remaining, that is the theory that is being supported. So you have other theories besides Tariqa Muhammadiyah, right? In your theoretical framework, and then you can reject. You know, it's like what is this? Sherlock Holmes, when you eliminate all other probabilities, whatever remaining, however improbable is the answer. Right. So that's Sherlock Holmes is deductive reasoning, right? So it's about deduction. Deduce dapat kat situ. So kalau just now Salma was talking about distilling the essences, right? Deductive research is actually about distilling. It's about, you know, remove. The last one is the answer, or come close to the truth, right? So again, deductive research is about not discovering the truth. It's about eliminating the falsehoods, so that at the end, whatever you have is purer. That's the idea.
Yeah.
But if you want to look at how Tariqat Muhammadiyah can manifest itself in the modern world, then deductive research is not the way. It's abductive research. Right. Okay, Reeza, this is coming to 1 o'clock. Right?
You sampai lah, kita should take this path or the other path.
You know where I'm standing. I declared my bias very early on. My bias is the abductive research. My bias is there. Is the inner explanation is the explanation, right, of social world. But then, all my students have done deductive. They have done there's inductive. There's the retroductive. They've done so. It depends on the research questions. So you go back to your research question. So you can frame your research question in a way that it can be answered through the methodology. That's the important thing, right? So you got to go back to your research question. What is it that you want to ask? But like many others over here that have underlying motive, I'm very concerned. Just like Muzakir has the underlying motive to show that Muhammadiyah is a successful model, right? I'm very concerned. But yeah, he has gone through the process, so he has given a critical review as well of the work. He has extended the literature and all that. So it's just a couple more steps he can submit. Iko is just waiting for his English revisions, and then she can submit too. Iko has done. She's abductive, Muzakir retroductive, right? So you're waiting for Chang. Yours is inductive, Chang, right? Okay. So Reeza, I'll leave it to you. You have to decide lah. But if you ask my opinion, since I'm a believer as well, I go abductive research, right? So because abductive Tariqat Muhammadiyah will manifest differently for different people. That would be my thought lah. So it cannot manifest the same way, right? What about families who do not have children? There's unsuccessful family lah, you know.
Parents.
katakan
Your parents were siblings.
parents who do not have siblings. Is it unsuccessful?
Finance, look at the finance. I don't know, I'm not.
Bukan finance lah. We're talking about end of akhir zaman ni, family without couples without family. Are they unsuccessful? Think about that.
They're successful materially lah. I mean the wealth that they have. Kamu ni yang banyak.
Yes,
Kamu ni yang banyak.
exactly my point. Kamu ni yang banyak, right? They do not have children.
They have tons of money.
They have a lot of money. The money is berkat, right? Comparatively, ada other people who have a lot of money but do not have berkat. Do not have berkat, then you have a lot of problems, right? So anyway, so that's that. My thought is just that. But then, as a supervisor, I must give the students must decide their own path. Which path they want to take. So you got to take this path. You have to choose. Right? Yeah, that one. I can only recommend. I can only say that recommend. So it depends on. Go back to the research questions. What is the research questions? Right? What are the research questions rather? Okay, guys.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more comments or thoughts? All right, Muzakir, you have your hands on your forehead. Huh? Confused. Whether
a lot of things to say.
Not a lot of things to digest. Okay, anything? Tandis, Muhammad, you have anything? Any thoughts? Oh, Putri was on the line just now. Putri is recovering from her COVID. So. Yeah, we wish her.
Sir?
Yes, Muzakir.
I want to share to Mr. Reeza. I think this is very interesting, but of course this religious experience. Yeah. So yeah, this like Prof. Reef mentioned. Yeah, I think it's very interesting when we can describe. Of course, there is still some. One Islamic thought, especially in Islamic world, but how the believer practice, so it could be many interpretation. So this is very interesting. In my opinion, when Mr. Reeza maybe can describe how one Islamic thought could be interpreted by the believer of the what called the Tariqa Muhammadiyah. Could be in my opinion could be made difference in certain degree. Even though one jamaah maybe So like Dr. Rifani said that maybe could be even in my study also in one institution have the different interpretation in one issue, for example. So maybe like what Prof. said, to could be give the what called give the interpretation more diverse than might be. If inductive, of course, then a religious experience could be So once I think it's depend on the research question. The research question, like the Prof. Pani said, that I think this is the compass for our research. I think this most important thing. Okay, thank you.
You're asking me how can it be integrative? Is that right? Is that it?
No, just comment. I'm not asking.
Yeah, Muhammad tadi, you have some thoughts.
How are you?
Oh, good, good.
Supervisor?
Okay, good.
Sorry for late. Sorry for late.
No, no problem. Okay, okay.
I listened to Ravani about his product, his presentation. So just I went to ask something. I think he will use a lot of Arabic vocabulary. Maybe he will need me.
So Mutadi is helping to help out with Arabic. But my brother Reeza, he's a self-taught Arabic scholar. Yeah.
This is kind of self-is. This is mentioned in Quran. He mentioned that نفس مطمئنة, نفس لوامة, نفس أمارة. This is a kind of self-is in Quran mentioned actually. So also ahdab or like this or ya latif, all this Arabic vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Was Arab is a spiritual language, so it has a lot of deep meaning, and it has one word can be interpreted, expanded in many different ways. Muzakir is also an Arabic teacher there, so
This is spiritual language because of Islam and Quran. This is religious culture common between Arab society. This is make their language as a spiritual language.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else like to share and give your comments, questions? No? Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. I will confirm next week meeting, next week presentation. There's a chance that I will bring it. Not, Raja gave me some thought just now because I'll be having my second vaccination on Thursday. So possibly or probably Friday I might be. I might need that time to rest. If probably I will bring forward to bring it later to another day in the following week. So I will confirm the date. Yeah. And then follow from there. Rajiv, Tandis, and Muhammad, you have a presentation there. What I have something here that I would like to share with all of you, and it's a thesis that was really complimented by examiners. With one of my students who has worked on grounded theories, now is a lecturer in UUM. So I will forward this to you all on grounded theory. Tandis and Muhammad, please take note of this. Tandis, I look at your work on grounded theory. I'm not sure about Muhammad because you didn't use that vocabulary of grounded theory. I do want you to really expand your understanding on grounded theory. Yeah? So what you have there is quite thin. I suspect it's not strong enough. So I will share this soft copy with you all on grounded theory, and you can look at his work. Right, his name is Shukri, Dr. Shukri now is in UAM. So his work he did very I thought very extensive. In fact, his understanding of grounded theory is so extensive that he got few special collection books on grounded theory. Grounded theory, there are two schools of thoughts, right? The Glacierian and Straussian school of thoughts. So you could look at that. Grounded theory can be seen as a theory that employs inductive or retroductive or in fact abductive. It's such a rich kind of theory, grounded theory, and grounded theory uses data and theory both at the same time. So I will send this to you all and this is a good benchmark of a good thesis, and so you can look at this work. So I will share with you. Take a look at it. Yeah. Okay. If there is no more comments or questions, we will adjourn our group supervision. So we started at what 9:30, right? So how many hours? 9:30, 11:30, 2 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours more or less. That's why I told Pravina just now, who just joined us, if she has time, she have time, then she can present. I suspect we won't have time because this is extended deliberation on two presentation, right? So we'll meet again. Thank you very much. Okay.